Or would it be a man cast? No, it's a mostly man cast and one broad. No, you can't call Steph a broad. Go on with you, Jeff. Sorry. I'll put myself in timeout.
The gentlemen and ladies broadcast, or gentlemen and ladies cast.
So yes, that sounds a little better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gentleman and lady.
There we go.
Hi, everybody.
I'm now in timeout.
Yeah.
I see that. Good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the live broadcast of the APG show for this week.
Ooh.
We're glad you're here with us. I should probably look at the chat room.
Great video quality, Liz says. Well, there you go.
All right.
We've been polishing our lenses.
And never mind.
I don't even know where you wanted to go with that, so I'm glad you stopped.
Well,
polishing other things come to mind. But hey, Mike Kuipers and Big Ron and Liz Piper, our producer, Rebecca Saylor. Hey, Rebecca. She should not be here. Okay, we will not tell anybody, Rebecca.
No, Rebecca who?
Yeah, what? Did I say something? Tiffany Alexandra Leon. Nick Anderson. Jerk.
Yeah, it's all right.
Hello, Lucas Diamond, the Flying Kiwi. Neil Lanvorn. How are you, sir? I'm just kind of scrolling.
Shouldn't it be
back.
Lucas Corundum?
I don't know. Should it?
Well, I don't know.
What's that?
Diamond sounds a bit bling. Okay. Corundum.
Gotcha. Oh, Neville's here.
Noily illegitime carborundum. Don't let the bastards grind you down.
Sounds like something they say in at Hogwarts.
Almost. I used to say it a lot in the Air Force.
I'm sure you did. And why were you forced to retire again? I'm trying to remember that story.
Yeah. Don't mention the bagpipes.
Okay, let's do our slapping, clapping.
I haven't filled out my board this week.
I didn't either, but I still have
naked board.
I don't have my board. So
I still have stuff that won't come off that like somehow permanently got on there.
You know, if you hadn't pointed that out, probably nobody would notice stuff.
Okay, there's nothing. See, you see nothing. Yeah.
Okay, start recorder. Start recorders.
Oh, hang on a minute. We're off.
Otherwise, the clacker thing is not going to do any good for me. Might do some good for you.
It's satisfying.
Yeah, very satisfying clacking noise. All right, are we all ready?
Ready.
3, 2, 1, clap. Okay, that'll be good enough. Yes, Nev, I still curse you for those things.
Yep.
We love
them.
I
love mine.
Thank you, Nev.
I liked it so much I got one made into a clock.
Did you now?
Yes, I did, but I can't have it out in the studio because it ticks. Who would make a studio clock look like a clapperboard? So the sort of thing you'd hang in a studio that makes an extremely loud tick. I mean, that is just stupid, isn't it?
Well, they didn't think it through, obviously.
They did not.
Okay, let's see. Let me go to Evernote. You guys ready with your show notes and stuff?
All set, ready to go, in fact.
Excellent. It looks like we are actually recording over here, which is a good thing. And let's do a sound check.
WAPG, it's the airline pilot guy.
Probably a little loud.
It's a little loud for me.
Well, not for me.
All right, and I'll just bring it down a little bit, and then Steph, you'll just have to grin and bear it.
Oh, can't wait.
We always enjoy her grins. Not so much the bear. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Sorry. I really didn't intend to go
Daddy
there.
the Buff.
I just kind of stumbled onto that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she
said. The actress to the bishop.
To the bishop. Okay, I think actually might be ready to go with this. So hang on, let me just change the size of this window.
Said the actress to the bishop.
Okay, we're recording. We're broadcasting. And here we go.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 337.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 322 in the Embassy Suites recording studios in Des Moines, Iowa.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Would you ride and it's flying by? The Airline Pilot Guy.
We'll keep going. In today's episode, helicopter quadcopter near collision, runway excursions, laser attacks, and federal air marshal shenanigans. More news, your feedback, and this week's plane tale, Mayday, 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 Cathay 780. So get all settled in, tray tables and seat backs in your upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 337 is ready for pushback. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's a weekly podcast where we talk about aviation news and answer our great community's wonderful feedback. And joining me today to help me with that is a young lady from her lakeside studio in South Carolina. She's a doctor, a skydiver, a marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument-rated pilot. Dr. Steph.
Good afternoon, Captain Jeff. It helps if I unmute myself. The reason probably be a little more conscientious of the mute button today because it is a glorious day here in South Carolina, so I have all the windows open. So I'm probably the one responsible for the ambiance this afternoon.
Okay.
You know, birds and dogs and trucks driving by and random things.
Well, that's fair, and I'm sure we'll enjoy all the ambiance. And also joining us from across the pond and his studio in England, professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, current captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick.
Good evening, Captain Jeff, and hi there, lovely Steph.
Hi, Nick.
Hi, it's a super evening here in the UK, and I've been waiting most of the day to do this because I haven't had a lot on today, so I'm really happy that we've got going. It's looking forward to a good show.
Excellent. And I'm looking forward to it as well. Steph, we missed you last week.
I know, I missed you guys too. I actually got to listen to most of the show as it happened. I thought I was supposed to have a meeting last week, so I hung around at work, just outside of work for a while, and went back for the meeting only to find out it was rescheduled.
Oh, your personal secretary did not advise you of this?
Well, they sent me an email, but it went to my work email, which I only check when I'm at work. And I had checked it that morning, and then I had left work for the day, and it came through sometime after that, which was disappointing.
Timing is everything, they say.
But while I was waiting for the meeting, I did manage to have a beer while I was listening to you guys and your wonderful discussion last week about the
Horizon
Q400 incident.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was great and really good discussion. It was a good episode.
Well, speaking of discussing of the Horizon Air Q400 incident, tragedy, I guess, another aviation podcast out there, one that focuses on air traffic control stuff, and they dabble in other things as well, but mostly air traffic control because that's what they do for a living. Opposing Bases. They contacted me and Captain Nick and asked if it would be okay if they used some of our discussion regarding that on their show. And then they went on, I'm sorry.
Different.
Yeah, that's a completely different subject. I really do
I
think
almost
I'm
stopped you before that.
losing my
Hit
mind.
the edit button. Hit the edit button. Do you want to start again?
Man. I'm not really sure how to recover this one.
Need some memory juice there. Yeah.
What I need is alcohol, and this is just water. That's my problem.
That's where you went wrong today.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I mean, today has just been one of those days where I've been kind of in a funk, doing all kinds of weird things and, stuff that I don't normally do. And I think, what's wrong? And then I'm thinking to myself, well, I still have like a little over 5 years to go before I'm forced to retire, but maybe I should retire now.
I'll just
Really
put
weird.
it down to the male menopause.
Yeah, that could be. Maybe I just didn't get a good, solid, quality night's sleep or something. I don't know. Anyway, so I was going to try to make that great connection between our show and their show, but it was a completely different subject. And that subject, and by the way, I'm just going to leave all this in because it's very entertaining. It may not be very educational, but it's very entertaining. So, yeah, what I was trying to do is tie something that we discussed last week with another aviation podcast, Opposing Bases. And that actually was the incident regarding Shamrock Aer Lingus taking off out of John F. Kennedy International and the very friendly John F. Kennedy controller and how he reacted to it and then their interchange, etc. If you listen to the show, you know what we're talking about, last week's show. And so that I thought that was kind of cool to hear their perspective. I was listening to their show's recording when I was on the way to work for my trip that I'm on now, and when I was taking the train, and it was very, very interesting. I'm glad they did that, and I'm glad that we kind of have this sort of collaboration. Not really, but yeah. So if you haven't listened to Opposing Bases podcast, you should definitely do so, especially that last episode.
I'm looking forward to that episode. I haven't had a chance to listen yet, but I've actually got some different feedback about a different incident that I want their commentary on, because I think it's probably a good reminder for a lot of pilots out there. So look out, guys. I'm sending that your way probably this weekend.
Yes. So if you're listening to our show, look for that. Somebody in the chat room saying, where's Dana? Well, Dana is still vacationing. Apparently, he's got a busy social schedule going on there.
I think he's got family in town or something.
I think so. Yeah, in-laws. I think he said, and very likely if the weather. I don't know what the weather's like in Atlanta today, but I would imagine they're probably out on that big pontoon boat out on the lake, and so I hope they're having a great time. And we
Looney Tune, isn't it? Not a tri-tune.
A Looney Tune, yeah. Well, no, the Looney Tune is the guy, the captain of the skipper. But anywho, keep in mind, by the way, loony, because we're gonna probably talk about that later in the show and feedback.
We are
a reference to that word. Yeah. So, and while speaking about the Opposing Bases podcast, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that there's another great it's an aviation podcast that also deals somewhat with air traffic control because its host is also an air traffic controller at a tower in Southern California. And that podcast by Brandon Gonzalez, or should I say BG? No, he uses his full name, is called Podcasting on a Plane. And those two podcasts just recently collaborated together, and they had an interview. RH and BG were interviewing each other, I guess, and so they played half of it on the Opposing Bases podcast and the other half on Podcasting on a Plane podcast. So that's an interesting connection between two separate podcasts that, well, you'll just have to listen to see that there are eerie similarities between one of the hosts of Opposing Bases and the host of Podcasting on a Plane. So very, very cool stuff going on out there. So Steph, other than the meeting that was rescheduled last Thursday, what have you been up to?
So I was out of town for most of the rest of that week, which is why it was not a good week for me to join you guys on other days. That was kind of my one chance to maybe slide in and join you guys for a few hours on the show. I had a continuing education event in Chicago, so I was there for the weekend, and turned it into a little bit of a vacation on the side too, which was nice. We actually had tickets to see Hamilton, so that was excellent. I can highly recommend the musical if anyone is on the fence about spending a lot of money to get tickets to go see it.
How much was it?
More than I'm going to say. We had excellent seats. Kind of the front row of the dress circle, which is the first balcony in the theater in Chicago. So that was, well, it was a birthday gift for someone. So I didn't mind spending a little bit extra money on it, and it was well worth it. It was a lovely evening, lovely weather in Chicago. Yeah, exactly. That's how I. Well, it's a gift.
I'm very envious of you seeing Hamilton. What was it like?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, if you listen at all to the soundtrack, the entire play is sung. So the soundtrack is the entire thing. So I already knew all of the music going into it, but it was just really wonderful to see it put all together on stage and acted out. Definitely recommend.
So did you get a lot out of your conference?
No, the conference was fantastic. That's one of the better conferences. I try to go to the high quality ones, the high yield ones. It's always a good review. They always have good kind of more academic folks than I, people who work at large academic centers and do a lot of teaching. So they bring in some really high quality radiologists and anatomists, and they go through a lot of the anatomy that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, but maybe don't think about in that great of detail always, as we're doing our just day-to-day jobs. So it's a nice refresher on everything. So.
Let's talk anatomy. No, let's not.
No, let's not. I can hear people turning off their podcast players right now. Just
we love it. We all watch Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, that's exactly how it goes in the hospital.
Yes.
And then it was a gorgeous weekend in Chicago. The weather was good for the most part. A couple showers here and there. And unbeknownst to me, there is an aviation connection here. It was the Chicago Air and Water Show was on over the weekend, which for the money is the best air show I've been to in a long time because it's free.
Well, hey.
So I went Sunday morning. We had some brunch. It was kind of an all-day thing, 10 to 3. Had some brunch, and then I caught the train up to the North Avenue Beach, where there were about 1 million people. No joke. It was quite crowded.
No
but
exaggeration.
It was just me, and I didn't have any stuff with me, so I kicked off my flip-flops. I had shorts on. I wandered right out to the beach, the edge where the water comes up. So I was standing in the water, which was surprisingly warm for Lake Michigan. I would guess maybe mid-70s. It felt.
That's all those people relieving themselves.
Yeah, probably. I mean, there were a lot of people in the water too. And as soon as I got there, first there was some. I don't know which aerobatic team it was that was putting on a show as I was walking up. I couldn't quite tell from where I was, but it was a nice display. And then the next thing immediately was the F-35, and then it was the Aeroshell display team, and then Sean D. Tucker right after that in his aerobatic display. And then there was a little bit of a gap. Then they had both the Golden Knights, the Army parachute demonstration team, as well as I think it's the Navy Leapfrogs, their demonstration team as well. I've never seen them before, but they were actually really good. And then a little bit of a break again, another single pilot demonstration, aerobatic demonstration. I forget who that was too off the top of my head. And then closed out with the Thunderbirds. So
what about, do they have any married pilot demonstrations or just the single pilot?
Just the single pilots, just the ones that aren't.
Is he available?
Maybe.
I didn't catch. Were the Blues there?
No, the Thunderbirds. And every year it's one or the other. I always manage to see the Thunderbirds. Doesn't matter which air show I go to, the Thunderbirds are there. Never the Blue Angels. So, but they were fantastic. Actually, they put on a really long display. I was surprised at how long they flew for. And I got very sunburned. So shame on me for not reapplying sunscreen. I did in the morning, but it clearly did not last the entire day. And then I still managed to get a 15-mile run in with my cousin who lives in the Chicago area before I jumped on a plane and came home.
Wow.
It was a jam-packed weekend.
Yeah, so I never have gone to any air shows and got completely burnt.
Never. That never happens at air shows.
Like pretty much every air show that I've ever been to, I think I have. Oh, well.
But I was really impressed. I mean, it was a great, for a free air show, and right on, I mean, you can't get a better location than that. It's right on the shore there on Lake Michigan. You've got the city kind of to the south in the background, and there's a lot of different places to watch it from. So if you ever find yourself in Chicago, I guess kind of this time of year in August, check and see if the Air and Water Show is on.
Chicago.
It's a great town.
My kind of town. All right. My apologies to Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra and anybody else who sang that song.
The entire of the Rat Trap.
Oh, they all did they?
Rat Pack, yes.
Rat Pack, yeah. Okay, well, excellent. Well, we're glad that you could join us this week, Steph.
Yes, me too. Looking
right.
forward to a good show.
Nick, how about yourself, sir?
Well, I'm back at work, so great. I did a trip to New York. It was just a sort of training trip, and went very well. I was very pleased that I hadn't forgotten how to fly the airplane. Managed to put it down on the runway in New York without breaking anything, so that was kind of cool. In fact, Ian, the training captain, sitting beside me in the first officer seat, was a very, very nice guy to do that kind of a clear the cobwebs out kind of trip. He's got a lovely manner with him. He's quite happy to remind you of the things you're not doing quite right, but in a very pleasant way. So they're a delightful chap. So that was good. Next trip off to Dubai, beginning of September, which will be a check of competency, and then I'll be off with the lads again. And then later on in next month, I'm coming to Atlanta, which I'm looking forward to. What else has been happening? Okay, apologies to Opposing Bases, because I have had a couple of messages from the guys. I still need to send some feedback about AJ's comment that all airplanes need to be helicopters. I've composed that bit of feedback in my head so many times, but I haven't actually got around to recording it yet. But when I do, it'll be a doozy. And of course, I understand they've commented on our comments, so I look forward to hearing those as well. But to be absolutely truthful, they fell off my podcast app and I never noticed, so I haven't actually had the usual reminders that there are ones waiting to listen to. So I usually have plenty of time to do that, walking the dogs and things, so that's great. On the same subject, I have told Swanwick, which is this sort of a traffic control center for the UK, that they're looking for airline pilots to come and join them for their training days. They often have sort of training days where they want airline pilots to be them in discussions, safety discussions, and the simulator room, etc. So I've been there a few times before, looking forward to the chance of doing it again if they take me up on my offer, because I know they're looking for guys to do that.
Do they have you like run around with your arms out and like you're an airplane? And
yep, that's exactly right. Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Airplane noises too.
Now I'm a 747 crash. Now I'm a 787. I sit on the ground. And
don't
now I'm an A340 and I fly like a bird. This
At least you
weekend,
didn't mention the Mad Dog, Jeff.
no,
That's
I
okay.
didn't. No, that's what
It's not worth mentioning anymore.
This weekend, one of my other activities is lawn bowls. Some of you may know, which is a gentleman's sport played here in the UK, where we, bowl bowls along on a nice flat piece of grass. But the finals weekend for our club competitions are coming up, and I'm in quite a big club. I'm very excited because I'm in the final of 2 singles competitions, and I have won one of them before, but not the other. And the one I really want to win is the club championship. That's the big, top dog of the club. I'd love to win that. That would be fantastic. Not even got into a final before, but this year I am. So fingers crossed for Saturday. And one of the lovely things is that a friend of mine from my days in the Australian Air Force flying F-18s, Rowie, who sort of took Gillian I under his arm a little bit when we first came into the country, because we got into the country at the end of the year and the Australian Air Force basically shuts down over the entire Christmas. They take 6 weeks off. And I really didn't know what was going on. And he said, well, look, you'll be on your own. You don't know what's going on. So come and spend Christmas with us. And we became firm friends. He has been flying for Qantas for many years. And very slow promotion in Qantas. So Rowie is now a first officer, taking him years to get to that position. And he's just converted onto the 380. So he's bringing the 380 into London tomorrow. And then we're going to get together over the weekend and have a few beers and talk about old times. That'll be great. So I'm really looking forward to that.
What do you mean that he has just now made it to first officer. Is there a position below that?
Oh yeah, they start off as second officers, and they often.
And what does a second officer do? I mean,
Cruise
second
line.
officer, like for my airline, when we had airplanes that had flight engineers, that was the second officer position, but no other.
No, in Qantas, I gather they're nothing but cruise pilots.
Oh, cruise pilot. Okay.
Yeah, they don't sit in the seat for takeoffs or departures. They only do the cruise. And someone like Rowie, who did many years in the Australian Air Force, incredibly good pilot. I just feel for him. It must have been frustrating for those years to do nothing but sit in the seat just for the middle bit and never do a approach. And
do they have to keep up landing and approach currency or not?
I don't think so. Well, I don't know. They might do. I don't know the ins and outs. I know they went in the simulator fairly regularly, so they can sort of practice it there. But whether they had a requirement to keep up their recency for landings, I don't know. I could ask him that. But he's been a first officer a little while now, and I think it'll still take him some time before he gets a chance for a command course. But I'll find out. I haven't seen him for a few years now. I'm praying he's bringing me a bottle of Galway Pipe, which is a beautiful Australian port. Now, some people will say there are better ones, but all the time I was in Australia, I didn't taste a better one. And, he often brings me a little taster, a little bottle of that, which is just lovely. The Aussies were really into their port when I was out there, and they make some wonderful wines. And of course, because they make good wines, they make great ports. It's lovely.
Well, in our chat room, Hurricane Lane Street says, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting
Lane.
two things together. I'm sorry.
He's been taking a lot of grief for that.
I know. Anyway, he says, sounds like Nick needs to do a recording with his friend. That would be fascinating.
Yeah, that would be, if we get a chance, that would be a good idea, because he's only with me like Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning, and he's got to fly home. So we'll have a go.
All right. Well, if you do, I look forward to listening. All right. And for me, let's see. What did I do? I think I was home pretty much the entire time since we last recorded. That last trip that I was on, I think we recorded on a Tuesday, and then I was home that Wednesday, and then I've been off until yesterday. So I had a nice group of days off, and I needed to be home because my wife and my youngest daughter headed back to North Carolina to get my daughter situated in her new apartment dorm thing. And so I was there to take care of the animals and stuff.
Apartment dorm thing?
Yeah, it's kind of like an apartment where you have like a common area and then three other roommates, so four all together, and then you each have your room and
like a bathroom ensuite or something. Yeah,
that seems to be the thing that a lot of
they're all going that way. Yeah.
When I lived in a dorm at Georgia Tech back in the 1800s, no, actually it was the 1970s. I was in a dormitory where you had a roommate and you didn't have your own bathroom. You had to go down the hall to the common bathroom, and it was an interesting experience.
That was my first dorm room too. So there you go. My second dorm room was more of an apartment, but it was still on campus. That
was my one and only dorm room. After that experience, I said, I'm not doing that anymore. But next year I stayed mostly in a mobile, not a mobile home, but a trailer,
like a single wide
trailer out near the vet school, because that was the only place I could find someplace to stay for that year. And then the rest of the time was apartments, like regular apartments.
For sale and rent.
I have a good song for that. It ain't home till you take the wheels off.
Sounds like we've all got a song about trailers.
It was a high-class trailer, let me tell you. Okay, anyway, so here I am back on this trip. Yesterday, I was back at Dulles, where I was twice last trip, and I met up with Robert Fairbairn. Both of those layovers last week, and he was one of our guest hosts in Steph's absence. And I told him again, I said, I hope you don't mind, but I'm back or at Dulles in Fairfax, Virginia. And if you have nothing going on, let's get together and do something. And he said, why don't we do lunch? So he actually I managed to get myself to DCA, National Airport, from where I was staying in Fairfax. And he picked me up from there. And then we went to Annandale, Virginia. And I guess they have a very focused concentration of Asian style cuisine and restaurants there. And we were going to try to do a meetup, but as far as I knew, nobody else was going to join us. It was just going to be Robert and I. And he goes, Korean barbecue. Have you ever been to a Korean barbecue restaurant? And I said, no, I have not. And he goes, I think it's going to be like too much food for just the two of us. And I said, okay, I trust your judgment. And he goes, why don't we go to this Chinese noodle shop kind of place? And I went, okay, let's do that. And so that's what we did. Had some great food from A&J restaurant in Annandale. And if you feel like, kicking in a little bit of, money for that promotion, feel free. It's feedback@airlinepilotguy.com. Actually, I should tell them, well, never mind. So we did that. And then while we were there, about halfway through, we were joined by another gentleman who has been at a previous APG meetup in Norfolk, Virginia. It was Joe Driver, and he was driving home from the Nag's Head or something like that. And he stopped in Norfolk, Virginia to be with us for our meetup there several months ago. And it turns out that Joe, and I knew this, I just forgotten that he was up in the Maryland area, and he drove down. I think it was about an hour drive for him, from what I can tell. But he joined us for lunch at A&J restaurant. So it was nice seeing you, Joe. Thank you very much for taking the time to drive all that way just for, that little bit of a time there at the restaurant. But we enjoyed each other's company. And and I didn't record any audio. So you are spared. You don't have to listen to meetup audio this week.
Aww.
I think it's quite nice when you have a meetup and you don't have to do any audio.
I know, it's kind of refreshing.
It's good fun.
You can actually concentrate on, actually
What's going
having
on?
conversations with people.
Enjoying each
Absolutely.
other's company.
Yeah. So next trip, I'm in Sarasota for 2 layovers at the end of this month. And I'm thinking, we're not sure exactly when we're going to be recording the next episode next week. But I can tell you that one of those days we can have some sort of a meetup. So if you're listening to the show, you're caught up with the podcast, and I'll put this out on social media as well. One of those days, probably the first layover I have there, the 28th in Sarasota, Florida, and we'll get together and go to a barbecue place, or maybe that there's some fish camp restaurant or something like that. A lot of people say it was pretty good. So we'll be open to suggestions, but we'll probably have some kind of an APG meetup there. Again, that's either the 28th or the 29th, I believe. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but in my notes here, I say 28th, maybe. Sarasota meetup, SRQ. Be there, baby. And then in September, we have a good friend and APG community member, Tanya. You probably heard her send us feedback on previous shows. And she contacted me and said, Jeff, I'm going to be flying from Atlanta to Newark on Friday, the 21st of September on Acme Airlines. And I want you to be my captain. I went, oh, well, okay. I'll see what I can do about that. And so I looked at the trip and I kind of went, it's not the kind of trip that I would bid. It has 4 legs on the, scheduled for 4 legs on that third day. And I'm thinking, and it's flying later in the day than I like to, but Tanya, love you. So I bid for that trip and got it. And bonus,
the guy that was flying it was probably going, whoa!
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, no, it was in the open. It was like the initial.
Open. Yeah, nobody wanted it. Okay.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't think that anybody in my seniority range would. It even flies into a Saturday.
4 legs must be a dog of a trip.
Yeah, well, it's not. The first day is not bad. I think it's only 1 leg to Columbus, Ohio. So we're going to probably have a brief meetup there because it's a very early morning the next day for me. So Columbus, Ohio, if you're in the area, James and Jen, maybe get together for a quick meetup. And then the next day, 2 legs to St. Louis, and I get in around midday in St. Louis. And so have already been some folks that I've been talking to about a meetup there in St. Louis on the 20th So if you're listening to this and you're in that area, make sure that you sign yourself up for Slack. Hillel can tell you about. Hillel, no, not yet. It's not time yet. Okay.
Too soon. Too soon.
Yes,
Hello.
too soon. Anyway, he'll tell you about how you can join Slack, and we'll try to communicate via Twitter and Facebook as well. So that should be fun. I'm not sure where we're going to be and what time and all that kind of stuff, but that'll be the 20th of September in St. Louis. And then, as I said, the next day is my long 4-leg day, but hopefully, I know what's going to happen. I specifically bid for this. That means that I'm going to get a reroute or something's going to happen, and we're not going to end up in flying from Atlanta to Newark. It'll be somebody else. But hey, I'm trying.
Best you can do. Best you can do.
Yes.
The thought that counts.
It's the thought that counts. That's for sure. So that's about it for me. Tomorrow, end up going to Atlanta and then doing a Birmingham turnaround. Birmingham, but we call it Birmingham. It's Alabama, y'all. And home in the afternoon. And I got I'm good for another 6 months. You'll be happy to know I had a FAA physical with a new AME who I really like a lot. And so that's going to work out well, I think, for the future. And he said, Jeff, how long has it been since you've done blood work? And I said, I don't know.
Get that done regularly. Don't worry about it. Everything is squeaky clean.
What does that mean?
Like blood work. What type of blood work are you asking for?
And he goes, okay, you need to go and get some blood work. So that's what I'm going to do tomorrow when I get home from my trip. I'm going to take myself over to one of those labs and have them poke me and take blood from me.
Yay.
No, yuck. Don't like that. Anyway, so that's it. You're all caught up now. Anything else we should talk about before we move on?
Nope.
Okay, because there's a lot of good news and feedback that we want to get to on today's show. So let's do this.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me.
Come on, Steph, sing with me. A cup. I see her. She's muted, but I can see her mouth moving.
Remember that latency thing where it just won't match up right?
Yeah. Okay.
That's my excuse.
All right. We'll have to take what we can get, I guess. Okay, Coffee Fun. We played the Java Jive. That's the Jeff Smith who is singing the Java Jive for us. And the reason why we're doing that is because we're talking about the Coffee Fund. That's your way to contribute to our show. And if you have the resources to do so, we would appreciate it. And if you want to find out how to do that, I'll tell you at the very end of this little segment. But since the last show, we have some new classic Coffee Fund contributors, David Wilson, Matt Marento, and Philip Boyd. And the other way to do it is become a patron via Patreon. And we have some new producers. What is going on? Is that just like happening to just me, or are you hearing the stuttering as well?
I hear it.
Okay. Well, you know what? Fix it in post, right?
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
I just assume you're not the Skype.
What I need to do is probably restart my computer, but I'm not going to do that. Okay. We have some new producers, Kevin Then and Claire Aitken. Welcome to the Coffee Fund Cadre, both of you, and thanks to all of you for being patrons via Patreon and also part of our classic Coffee Fund Cadre. And learn more about how you can join us by heading over to airlinepilotguide.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did. All right. I'm going to take a pause here, and maybe it'll help if I restart this. Probably not. I think I need to restart the entire computer, but that's going to mess everything up.
Yeah, don't do that.
Do that. So let me restart.
No, I want to go to bed tonight.
Sound playing app. I know. We'll just power through it. I've had to do this before, where I had to, like, all the bumpers and sound clips and stuff I had to put in on a separate track. Yeah, a little time consuming, but oh well. You're worth it, folks. Okay, here we go.
Thanks.
I don't hear anything.
That fixed it.
Yeah, that did it. All right, what's going on? Okay, turn that off and then on. That always works with electronics. Turn something off, turn it back on. Sometimes that works. Okay, here we go.
Stand by for news.
Okay, let's start off with our first item in the news folder. A Chinese plane skidded off the runway at Manila Airport during a downpour. A Chinese plane. Do they mean a Chinese-made plane or a plane owned by China?
A Chinese airline of some sort.
Yeah, I don't like this headline.
You don't like the grammar, the way it's composed.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It's not working for me. And
It's a Boeing aircraft.
This is from
Which
Taiwan
one?
Corporation.
Looks like some awful 737.
It
I
is a
don't think the
737.
Chinese make those.
They
But they
don't.
might well have done.
Maybe they make some parts for it. Seems like they
Probably
make
do.
parts for everything.
Yeah, the gear and the wings and the fuselage, tailplane, fin, engine.
Moving on, as
cockpit,
Matt Smith likes to say.
seats.
Moving on, a Xiamen Air plane sits on the grassy portion of the runway of the Ninoy Aquino International Airport.
Nailed it.
Yeah, as I always do. After it skidded off the runway while landing August 17th, 2018. And did you watch the video? There's a video connected to this.
Oh no, I missed the video.
Oh, yeah, you because you really do need to watch it. So do that while I'm
okay.
reading this.
Continue talking.
Okay. All the passengers and crew were safe. They
Where's the
were
video?
landed.
Sorry.
Now. You might have to actually click on the link
The actual
to the actual
article.
article, and
Okay.
then I think that you'll see it there. I hope. Or is it in the second article that we have here? I don't know, but if you don't get a chance to see it, Steph, you should. We'll try to figure out what the actual link is to that video, because it shows it's a in-cabin video, and the person taking the video is pointing the camera outside the window, and you can see the left engine pylon and left engine, and you can see the runway approaching as it's making its transition from approach to landing. And you can kind of see, from what I can tell on the video, very, very close to the left side of the runway, not in the center of the runway, unless it's a very narrow runway, which I don't believe it is. And apparently it was raining like all get out, and it touched down pretty hard. And because shortly after it touches down and you can hear some rumbling and people screaming, it stops. So the recording, that is.
The screaming stops. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Recording.
the whole thing stops. But again, apparently nobody was seriously injured. It landed at Manila's airport in a downpour near midnight, then got stuck in a muddy field with one engine and wheel ripped off before its 157 passengers and 8 crews scrambled out through an emergency slide. Only a few passengers sustained bruises at all, but they were all taken into the airport terminal, were given blankets and food before being taken to a hotel, and paid a large sum of money for them not to talk about this ever again.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, I added that part. Let's see. The 737 was from China's coastal city of Xiamen, appeared to have bounced in a hard landing that veered off the runway shortly thereafter and rolled toward a rain-soaked grassy area with its lights off. Now, not understanding that one. We think that when it landed, the plane swerved to the left and veered off the runway, said Monreal, who expressed relief that a disaster had been avoided. And so I guess they're going to see what's on the plane's flight recorder and voice recorder and try to get down to the bottom. Now, honestly, I haven't checked on the any updates to this in the last few days, so I'm not sure if they have determined anything at all. But looks like it closed down the runway there at Manila for quite a number of days, and or at least, well, I'm not sure, till 5 a.m. Saturday. When did this happen? No, I guess it wasn't too long. They finally managed to get the thing pulled out of the muck and out of the way so they could reuse that or use that runway again. Oh, okay. So that's all I have to say about that, I guess. But I thought that was another interesting runway excursion.
Yeah, the industry
Anyone?
has taken a lot of interest in these because it is one of the most common problems that lead to accidents, and this has got to be termed an accident, surely, rather than an incident. And we're all very conscious now of landing distances, and we practice go-arounds from on the runway when we decide to bolt when things aren't looking good. We practice very low go-arounds because everything is now centered around getting the approach stable and organized so that when you do land and you've done really careful calculations in land distance, this sort of thing shouldn't happen. Now, of course, if he met a really unexpectedly difficult wind gust or a down burst or something, then of course this sort of thing, you know, the weather really takes control of your airplane, shakes it around. There's not a lot you can do about it. But hopefully you've had the common sense not to even attempt an approach if it looks that bad. But of course, not all these airfields have sophisticated equipment around them that might indicate wind shears. They may not have particularly good weather radar around there. So, you know, it all depends on the situation the captain saw at the time. But we are trying so hard to get rid of these kind of incidents, but yet they still keep occurring.
So, just recalling my most recent passenger experience into Chicago this past weekend, arrived on Wednesday night, which I think was the 15th. Ooh, really? You're going to start your car right now as I'm talking?
Sound like someone coming through the door.
I know, right? No. So anyway,
It's a very loud car.
yeah, it's right outside my window. It's a diesel engine pickup truck. Hold on. You'll edit this out, right? Because it'll be less noisy in 3, 2, 1. Okay. So anyway, we're as a passenger flying. It was a Nick will love. It was a 737, 700 series aircraft.
Brave girl.
Flying into Chicago's Midway Airport, and they had some. Actually, I think O'Hare at the time was on a ground delay because of large thunderstorms in the area, and we were landing on 22 left, so we made a nice approach over Lake Michigan, and then there's a left turn as we were coming in from the east, and lined up with the runway. And it's, you know, beautiful blue skies where we are, and about a quarter mile final, it just starts pouring, like pouring rain. Clearly, one of those thunderstorms. Cells was, I don't know that one was a thunderstorm, but you know, a decent rain shower. But happened, you know, quite close to the ground, short final there. In my mind, I was just thinking, gosh, that's just me flying as a private pilot in a small aircraft. Obviously, that's not something I'm attempting, but just to transition from that environment of, hey, everything looks great, to all of a sudden, you know, reduced visibility. Usually train for that to happen kind of the other way around. Things get better as you get closer to the ground instead of, unless you're flying into fog or something like that below the ground. But it was a fun landing. Runway 22 left has an available landing distance of 6,445 feet, which is just under 2,000 meters. I was sitting pretty close to the main gear on the left side, down the back of the cabin, and I watched as the 1,000-foot mark went by and we weren't on the ground. So there was some quite heavy braking, but cheers to those guys for doing a good job and getting us safely stopped at the end of the runway. So.
Yeah, you do worry a little bit sometimes, don't you?
There was a lot of water on that runway, because I turned around and watched the plane behind us land after we had vacated the runway. And, you know, there's always a lot of spray when you're using reversers and things like that. But you could watch the water coming off of the nose gear, off of the nose tire, just how much water they were going through.
Yeah.
It was quite a lot of water on the field. So.
And the difference between wet and contaminated, you don't need a great deal of standing water. And not a lot of people would ever consider doing contaminated runway braking distance calculations. It is a problem sometimes.
Yeah.
Neville Bounds says, this sounds like Pip's landing at Seething last Saturday. Had to pay 2 landing fees.
Oh my!
Excellent.
He's not even here to defend himself.
I know. That's really sad.
He's just getting some extra practice in.
That's right.
I hope you logged them both.
Yeah,
So,
well, I mean, absolutely get credit where credit's due.
This says, the second article in this says, initial feedback from Manila Tower And then they have some Filipino language mixed into this paragraph, so I'm not going to even attempt to read that. Anyway, it says that Manila Tower tried to, the plane tried to approach for landing once and did not push through and then return. So it sounds like this is their second attempt on an approach and landing. And the first one, they said, no, we're not doing this. Just not good. And then maybe there was some pressure because of the fuel state and where they were going to have to go to, if they had to divert, and they decided, well, we're going to give this one a go. We're going to concentrate more this time. And it didn't turn out very well.
Like that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's an interesting fact in this situation. Okay. Let's move on to this one. This was actually a tweet, and I think I must have seen this on Twitter from somebody in our community. But Chris Van Cleve is the tweeter, and he says at CBS News has obtained what appears to show a near collision between a helicopter and a drone, a quadcopter actually, off of Hollywood, Florida, which is near Fort Lauderdale. The chopper passes just below the drone, according to I'm quoting from the tweet. The FAA is investigating. And then with this, there's also some video footage. Now for the crew here, I think I just have a still here, not a.
I've watched this, so
Okay.
I did see that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. You don't really see anything until like the very last minute, and then you see this helicopter come into view and then goes by right below the camera mounted on this what we'll call a drone. And it was close, but I don't believe there was any collision there, but almost.
No collision, but it's, it's a good reminder of how, you wonder where the person is that's actually operating this drone, if they were on the beach there, because this is right on the beach in Hollywood, Florida. Did they see that helicopter approaching from far off? Because certainly the helicopter is not going to see that drone in the air until right at the last second, if at all.
And there's a lot of aircraft traffic low up and down the beach. That's just not a good place to be flying your quadcopter.
No, he came quite close by the look of it, just visually looking at it. And of course, there's always a bit of distortion. It's wide angle lens, but 20 or 30 feet above him, that's where the drone was positioned. So I was going, whoo, yeah, not good. And of course, we know that there's some trials being done as to the danger of drones hitting aircraft. And one of the worst situations was a light aircraft or helicopter hitting a drone because, of course, their canopies, particularly helicopters, are not stressed to withstand, a high impact. And it's quite likely that a drone could penetrate inside and, hit the pilot. Certainly lodge somewhere, and we know they've got lithium-ion batteries, and we know what happens when they get damaged. So they present a real danger to GA aircraft and helicopters.
Yes, that is for sure. All right, moving on. This one occurred in Australia, near Canberra. Is it the
Canberra?
Canberra. On August 15th, 2018. A loss of cabin pressure and the first officer incapacitated. It was an express freighters Boeing 737-300 near Canberra, and they were flying on behalf. There was a freight flight on behalf of Qantas, and they were performing flight 7335 from Brisbane to Melbourne. They were en route at flight level 260, about 110 miles northwest of Canberra, when the crew received wing body overheat warning, which resulted in a reduction of cabin pressure. The crew donned their oxygen masks and descended the aircraft to flight level 200. First officer became incapacitated, however. The captain descended the aircraft to 8,000 feet, advised they were diverting to Canberra, requested emergency services on standby, an ambulance to meet the aircraft on arrival, and stairs for medics to enter the aircraft. On final approach, already in contact with tower, the captain advised the first officer was still unconscious. The aircraft landed on runway 35 without further incident. The first officer was taken to a hospital. Now, this is from the Aviation Herald, and one of the commenters that I have highlighted here in what we're looking at, the APG crew. He writes, that is completely incorrect. The captain stated to the medics that the first officer is coherent and think he is all good and he's still conscious and everything like that. So, and apparently there was an ATC recording of this, and this person commenting said, the ATC recording is very clear. So,
yeah, I think it would be, I mean, if it's unconsciousness just due to loss of cabin pressure at high altitude, unless there's something else unusual going on with that first officer's physiologic state, normal physiologic state, he should regain consciousness.
so I would imagine then perhaps there is something going on. I mean, if that happened to any of us and we passed out, I think we'd say, probably shouldn't pass out.
Well, so what they were at flight level
26 and
you could pass out at that
8.
level if
I know,
you're
but
without oxygen for
yeah, I
long
wonder
enough, but
how
you
long-
should.
yeah.
I mean, depending on how long, I have to go back and look at those time of useful consciousness at
2.5
different
minutes.
altitudes.
25,000 feet.
So that's a long time to go without putting an oxygen mask on. But yeah, I mean,
But I'm not even sure that they, they said that, I guess they must have run some kind of a procedure with this wing body overheat message. And I don't know anything about this. I don't know exactly what this is, but I suspect it has something to do with the ducting, the high pressure pneumatic ducting. And there are sensors that sense temperatures. And if it's getting to be a high temperature, there's probably some kind of a rupture in the pneumatic, which of course would lead to a loss of cabin pressure. I don't know if it was a complete loss or just a partial loss. And regardless, they descended. They did the right thing, just in case there was a complete reduction of cabin pressure. So there's still some details in this I think are missing for us. So I'm not sure, but
yeah, I mean, I think there's something else going on that we're not aware of here. I don't think it was just due to a brief loss of consciousness due to.
Well, let's bear in mind that not many civil pilots get a chance to do any hypoxia training or cabin pressurization, decompression training. So the first time they get it for real is the first time they'll get it, and it is quite a dramatic event. So they won't be used to the physiological effects, and there's lots of things that might have occurred. He might have had low blood oxy anyway through another medical problem, and the
Correct.
reduction in the oxygen pressure was sufficient to render him unconscious for a short while. He might have hyperventilated himself unconscious because he was overly anxious. There's lots of things that might have occurred. Yeah. So, I get the feeling that he might have worked himself into a bit of a lather, or perhaps he just suffered badly. But the fact is that one of the reasons we get reasonably intensive medicals is to ensure that we are fit enough to be able to cope with these sort of events without flaking out. Because, good heavens, if both of you flaked out, then the airplane uncontrolled at that altitude, everyone on board is eventually going to die. That is serious. So yeah,
and people can have different symptoms with regards to hypoxia. They should resolve once you resolve the hypoxia, but if he was feeling perhaps nauseated or queasy because of it, that's something that I think could stick around a little bit longer, make him feel potentially unwell.
Excellent stuff.
So I mean, there's just all kind. I mean, that's just one example of many things that he could have been experiencing.
Yep. Nauseated. You used the right word.
I did?
Yes.
Okay.
Why?
Because a lot of people would say he would have gotten nauseous, and that's when you're making somebody else sick.
All right.
Well, maybe. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, no, I'm not quite as impressed because you didn't realize you used the right word.
I just wasn't sure which word you were referring to.
Oh, okay.
Of course, I knew the correct usage.
Oh, of course. You're a highly educated doctor.
Yeah, my English skills is perfect.
So what was I going to say? Oh, Nick, you said most civilian, and that's true. Most civilian pilots don't get the opportunity that all of us military pilots do, and get to get into what do we call an oxygen chamber or hyperbaric?
Hyperbaric. Well,
hypo something.
Hypobaric.
Something baric. Whatever. One of those things you get inside, and they simulate high altitude and loss of cabin pressure, rapid decompression, and that kind of thing. But they are, I'm going to plug another podcast, Flying and Life by our good friend Dispatcher Mike. When he was at Oshkosh this past July, he visited, I think it was
The FAA runs it.
Yeah, the FAA ran some kind of a thing where you can go in and simulate. And I think that they do is they add a higher level of nitrogen, which I guess results in a lower level of oxygen in whatever this.
I'm not sure how their hypoxia chamber works, but that sounds, I think he
Doesn't
talked
sound
about
like
it.
too much of a chamber is just, a mask on and depriving
Deprivation.
yourself of oxygen.
Right. And they do have actually really low cost simulators that it just consist of essentially a mask, and they restrict your breathing. And so there are other ways to simulate hypoxia. But it's good because, it may not be as fancy as what Nick and I got a chance to experience. But at least it gives you that the demonstration of how your cognitive abilities really decline pretty rapidly, and how some of us see blue fingernails, or our lips are turning blue with cyanosis.
Yep.
And other symptoms too. It's a good chance for you to recognize what symptoms you're most likely to experience first, because for the individual, it's more likely than not to be the same things each time you experience it, but it'll be different between different people. So you can't rely on someone else's symptoms to know what you're going to feel or experience. But if you already know how you react to it, then that's a big heads up, and you're more likely to recognize it.
Right.
Yeah, that's very true. And but you've got to do it a few times, because you need to be able to get it out short-term memory into your long-term memory, which is a chemical memory, because your short-term memory is wiped out by hypoxia, which is why when you come around, takes you a moment to work out that you're actually in an airplane. Oh yeah, I remember now, I'm in an airplane. This is what's going on. Can take 20 or 30 seconds. And if you don't have those symptoms embedded in your chemical memory, your brain can't recall them, because your short-term memory is disappearing. You've got to have done it a few times, and then you learn to recognize it. So doing it just once is a great idea. But if you're a regular visitor to Oshkosh and you are concerned about this sort of thing, then go and do it, once every year for a few years. And then there's a good chance that you'll never forget it when you actually have a real hypoxic or hypoxia moment.
That explains the way I'm behaving today. I must be experiencing hypoxia.
Could be.
For all I know, I may have been passed out for several hours. I just don't remember it.
Yeah, you do look a bit passed out.
Thank you. All right. Continuing on with this one, an RAAF warplane's engine destroyed itself, why would it do that? Causing $120 million fire. Nick, since you flew a version of this airplane, right?
This is a Growler, so this is the Super Hornet, but I flew what is now quaintly termed the classic Hornet.
Oh, you know what? I saw something on Twitter last week, and they were showing an FA-18, and they said it was a World War II airplane.
Yeah, yes, I saw that.
That's great. I sent a tweet to Nick, and I said, and you thought my airplane was old.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyone else upon reading this, just real quick, the headline here, think this engine will self-destruct in 3, 2.
Oh, I love it.
Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
No, it was a Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So why don't you go ahead and take this one?
Yeah. So the Royal Australian Air Force pride itself on having some pretty decent aircraft, and they have had the FA-18 since it replaced the Mirage back in the late 80s, about 87. So now they have purchased the Growler, and it's the Super Hornet. So they were flying this out of Nellis, and I'm just trying to look for an appropriate place to join this. So 2 Australian Air Force pilots are being praised for their expert response to a dramatic engine malfunction that saw their advanced electronic warfare plane skid across a US runway before catching fire. The newly delivered EA-18G Growlers which it's a beer dispenser, isn't it? Isn't that what it
Yes,
really
a growler
is?
is a container
An
for beer.
extremely expensive flying beer dispenser, which is very apt for the Australian Air Force. Well, I was
this
taking
show,
part. In fact, Steph, you bought me one.
I
was
did.
taking part in military exercises and was about to take off from Nellis Air Force Base outside Las Vegas when the emergency occurred. 6 months on from the fiery mishap, the Defense Department has confirmed the damaged growler has been, quote, withdrawn from service. And the department has begun to examine how it can sue the arse off the idiot American Boeing company that built it. Oh, I'm sorry. How it can recover the cost of the aircraft are believed to be worth 120 million. The investigation into the Growler aircraft incident has been completed and was provided to the Chief of the Air Force on July 30th. Now senior military figures with knowledge of the investigation have detailed the circumstances of what is being described as the most serious incident of its kind for the Australian Air Force in more than 25 years. So the article goes on
Captain
to...
Nick was there.
Yes, exactly right. That's perfect
Think about
timing, isn't
That
it?
is about. That is
Do the time.
Just do the math.
Do the math.
Shh, shh, shh. So one officer who spoke to the ABC on the condition of anonymity revealed the aircraft engine destroyed itself, committed suicide, engine side, whilst in full power during the attempted takeoff. The two pilots did an incredible job to stay with the aircraft and keep control to avoid hitting other aircraft parked nearby, the officer told the ABC. Had the incident been a couple of seconds later, they would have been off and likely would have had to eject after clearing the runway. The investigations confirmed that a high-pressure that was right the first time. A high-pressure compressor in the Growler's engine had broken into 3 major pieces. Wow. With one segment piercing through the bottom of the jet and taking chunks out of the runway. So an uncontained engine failure. Not good. Another piece went sideways through the second engine, causing severe damage, whilst the third piece went up and destroyed the right-hand tail fin before flying away and landing some distance from the jet. The jet came to a halt, the rear fuselage was engulfed in fire. The main undercarriage collapsed, and 2 of the 3 ALQ-99E electronic jammer pods it was carrying were severely damaged. So I think the Aussies are saying, this is a brand new jet. It blew up. We want our money back. And I wouldn't blame them.
Give us a new one.
Yeah, I think that's what they're basically saying. So they're looking for compensation from the airframe manufacturer Boeing and the engine maker General Electric. Let's just make sure everyone knows Boeing.
Well, thank you for
General
putting all that
Electric.
emphasis on those names.
No problem. That's just my job.
Yeah. Okay. Steph, note to self or note to me, don't let him read any of these things.
Yes.
Okay.
Or just when if you give him an article to read, just strike out any reference to manufacturers, so he is unaware of which.
Yeah, we'll just make it as generic as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally in our news folder, this is a very interesting thing that just happened on Monday night. Pilots on United Airlines Flight 3531, operated by Republic Airlines, the call sign is Brickyard, declared an emergency Monday night en route to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport because a passenger showed his weapon to a flight attendant. It gets stranger. Let's listen.
Is that a
Final match 3-0 left.
Yes, sir.
Is that a that what she said moment?
Yeah, I
it
was wondering if
After-
it was a.
When I read that, I actually wrote that out, and then now that I'm reading it out loud, I realized that I just set myself up for a that's what
You
she
did.
said moment. So we'll just move on, and we'll think about that.
See here.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Let's do this, and we'll have another, and maybe I'll have time to rewrite the sentence.
We got to backpedal here a little bit. Backtrack.
Yeah. Sorry, Liz. She's going. What happened to D, Jeff? Did you purposely skip that? No, I did not purposely. I was. I had it in the queue, all queued up, and then I'm thinking, well, we're still talking about the previous one, and then I'm thinking, okay, I'll just automatically go to the next one, And that's not the first time that I've done that on this show, and it won't be the last. But luckily, I have a producer here that's keeping track and kind of has the whip going and saying, "What are you thinking? Don't skip it." So let's go back to D. Laser beam attacks bedevil U.S. military pilots in the Mideast. This has Steph written all over it, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
All right. So this is from the Wall Street Journal, I believe. Hostile forces in the Middle East are targeting American pilots with laser pointers at a growing rate, imperiling air crews and reflecting a problem more widespread and long-standing than the Pentagon has previously acknowledged. American pilots operating in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, the three most prominent conflict zones for American troops, experienced most of the more than 350 lasing incidents. I love that word, lasing. Incidents reported over the last 7 months by air crews operating across the Middle East. U.S. officials at U.S. Air Force's Central Command in Qatar said. So that's a significant increase from the approximately 400 lasing incidents reported for the region during all of 2017. Let's see. I'll just skip down here to where you have highlighted the important stuff. Hostile forces typically point small handheld lasers at pilots in flight, especially during landings when they are most visible from the ground, in an attempt to distract them, officials said. Such incidents could result in an accident, although officials said there haven't been any mishaps as a result of the lasing. It is unknown how coordinated or organized the attacks are. Officials declined to discuss specific details about the perpetrators. The attacks against military crews have resulted in minor injuries, including short-term vision impairment and headaches, military officials said. They were not aware of any permanent injuries resulting from the attacks, most of which occurred near major population centers or military air bases in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. So it goes on. Lots of information. There is more about. Let's see. I'll go through a little bit more of this here if you'd like.
Yeah.
I think So lasing attacks have long been a nuisance for commercial pilots, as we've talked about numerous times in the past. The FAA reports that thousands of lasing incidents each year occur, which can range from individuals using small cat lasers, or in some cases, more powerful military.
Where does the laser come out of a cat?
So apparently, cats.
Did you ever see Laser Cats on Saturday Night Live?
I thought you.
Oh my gosh, that's a classic.
Can't you go to the pet supply store and go to the cat section and then find the little lasers in there? I mean, cats love playing with those things.
And I have had several dogs that enjoy playing with them as well.
One of mine is absolutely paranoid. We can't get it. Yeah, we can't bring one out ever again because it just goes.
If you have never watched the Saturday Night Live digital shorts from a few years back called Laser Cats, watch them. They're really silly, but the more they keep putting them out, and they just get funnier and funnier. Anyway, where was I? Yes, the FAA reported more than 2,800 lasing incidents for the first 6 months of 2018. Seems like quite a lot.
Wow.
On par with the 2,700 reported between January and June of last year. Since 2004, there have been at least 55,000 incidents reported by civilian pilots, including in the US, UK, Australia, Italy, and Canada. Oh, said Patrick Murphy, a laser expert and editor of laserpointersafety.com. Now you know, an educational site that tracks the misuse of consumer-type lasers. Of those, he said, there are no documented or proven cases of permanent eye injury. So the biggest worry is distraction, and the most damaging laser pointers are green because the eye sees the color green as the brightest. All right.
You know, it's one thing shining a laser at a civil aircraft where the worst that's going to happen is a policeman's going to come knocking on your door. But out there, shining them at military aircraft, you're likely to get a bit more of a...
Yeah, you might get a fight back, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So I think these guys are being a bit brave. And I feel a bit sorry for the military guys because they're being distracted at a critical time of their landing. But, you'd think the military would have enough wherewithal to go and find these perpetrators.
Yeah.
The perps.
I guess the thing to draw from this whole thing is that they're irritating and distracting, but apparently for most of the lasers out there, unless we're talking about military grade lasers, they don't really do permanent damage to the eyes.
I think you'd probably have to stare at it quite a bit longer than most people are able to. I mean, it's very irritating, obviously, and your initial response is going to be to close your eyes or look away. So that's a safety mechanism kind of built in.
Yeah, our good friend and APG community member and sometimes APG host, Jeff, Colonel Jeff, the good-looking Captain Jeff, has experienced a lazing. Now, when did it? I guess I'm thinking, like, what is that really a word, or I guess it's become a word now? Lazing, kind of like tasering. They call it tasing.
Journalist Gordon Lubold appears to like the word quite a bit because I think he used it in almost every sentence in this article.
Yeah, I bet there was some kind of a beer bet or something.
Yeah, how many times can you put lazing into one article?
Yes, I did it. Way to go! Good
437.
job, 437. Okay, now.
Well, I've looked it up, and it says laze, verb, of substance, especially a gas or crystal, undergo the physical process employed in a laser. So you can laze. So I guess you can perform lasing.
Yeah.
I guess that's legal.
I'd be curious to know, like the etymology of the word. As far as when did it become a recognized verb?
Oh, recent.
Very
1960. Back formation from laser interpreted as an agent noun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, 1960 something you said?
1960s. The decade really? Doesn't give an actual date.
Wow. Okay. Well, then we shouldn't complain about that word. All right. So now getting back to the article I was trying to start to read earlier in the show. So again, pilots on United Airlines Flight 3531, operated by Republic Airlines, call sign Brickyard, declared an emergency Monday night en route to MSP because a passenger, well, let's let you listen to the audio.
Clear to land 30 left, Brickyard 3531. And Tower Brickyard 3531, do you want us engine shut down as soon as we hit the ice pad?
Brickyard 3531 for now. Affirmative, plan to turn off at Mike or Alpha 8, your discretion, and park in the 12 right to the ice pad. We haven't had any word yet on whether you need to shut down the engine.
Roger, Brickyard 3531.
Brickyard 3531, affirmative, turn right at Alpha 8, park in any spot. They're going to bring air stairs to you. You can shut them down, and everyone's been notified they're on their way.
Roger, copy all instructions, Brickyard 3531. Brickyard 3531 is in the pad. It looks like spot 3 we're facing 0 Earth.
Brickyard 3531, it's not a problem. We're not going to depart 30 left. To any spot you want to park to shut it down, they will bring air stairs out to you. We're just waiting on someone to show up.
Roger, and we're facing the terminal, Brickyard 3531.
Brickyard 3531, everyone's been called. We should have people to you shortly. Do you require any other assistance at this time that we might have missed?
No, right now everything's quiet. We're just trying not to raise suspicion just in case this is a serious issue. So we're just sitting here. We're going to tell them that we're waiting on our gate at occupy.
Brickyard 3531, right?
And Tower, Brickyard 3531.
Brickyard 3531, Tower.
Okay, so we just got a confirmation from United Ops via our dispatch on the gate cars. They are confirming that both of those gentlemen are air marshals. The reason we declared an emergency for suspicious reasons is because the air marshal actually showed our flight attendant his gun, which my first officer is a FFDO. He's not armed at this time, but he was saying that is completely against SOP for them to show their firearm. So that's the reason we declared an emergency, but they did say that apparently both of these guys are federal air marshals.
Brickyard 3531, Roger. They are bringing the stairs out to you now. Do you want to continue to a gate, or would you like to deplane them from there?
You know what? We can start number one and taxi to the gate since they did confirm their fire marshals. Just have them work behind us if that's cool with you guys.
Brickyard 3531, not a problem. You can fire one up. Let me know when you're ready to move.
All right, we'll fire one up.
Brickyard 3531, where will you be parking?
I think they're taking us to Echo 5, but we're checking.
Thank you.
And just in case, the United is confirming it, but if you could just still have police beat us so we can figure out what the hell went wrong with this.
Brickyard 3531, yeah, not a problem. We'll have them follow you. I'm not sure which ones are on the frequency, but we're saying we're being told we're just going to leave you there for now until we get confirmation from our end. But then I'll move you as soon as you got one started, and I can let you go that way.
Yeah, I got one started, so I can move any moment, but you let us know when you want us to head over there.
Okay, thank you. Just hold there for now. I'll let you know as soon as I can move you.
And once again, sorry about this all, guys. It's just was very suspicious tonight that he would show our flight attendant his gun.
Not a problem. We're glad to help. Brickyard 3531 Tower.
We're up, Brickyard 3531.
Call from your dispatch. They're coordinating with the PD as well. They'd like to clear the aircraft there. So we'll try to get that worked out and get the air stairs up to the plane. I'm not sure if you want to shut it back down and do that first, and then we'll move you after they clear the airplane.
Roger, we'll shut it down here. Both engines are off. APU is running. Brickyard 3531. Yeah, so the story gets better here. So apparently the air marshal was pretty upset that the flight attendant called us after showing showing her his gun, and that he's now telling her he should have never called the flight deck. It sounds like he's kind of agitated with her, so just be aware of that.
Brickyard 3531, Roger, we'll pass that along.
Yeah, this is a whole mess here. From what I understand, I don't know why he didn't show her his badge. The story goes down that he walked up to her, said he needed to see the manifest, demanded it. He was trying to find a passenger, and showed her his gun. And she just found that super suspicious, especially since we didn't even know we had SAMs on board.
Roger. Ops 43, Roger. And Brickyard 3531, the air stairs and the PD are moving now. If you want to inform the flight attendants to disarm the doors.
Roger. And tower for Brickyard 3531.
Brickyard 3531, tower.
Just till we make sure everything is good to go, I'm going to leave the flight deck door closed. So as soon as ops and the police department says it's okay, I'll leave the flight deck door locked.
Brickyard 3531, thanks. We'll pass that along. I believe ops is listening, but will they give you the signal from the cabin for you to do that, or you want me to let you know?
Just if ops can pass that, or I'm sure they'll knock here in a minute. I'll open my window so I can talk to them if I need to. But if they give you a heads up, that'd be good too.
Okay, had a little break here. By the way, this is as normal, highly edited. Took a lot of stuff out that I didn't think was really pertinent to this story. Have a little bit more here at the end. We'll continue playing that here in a moment, but I have the pause here to let you know that apparently they did bring the air stairs up to the airplane. They opened the door and took the two passengers that claimed that they were, and I guess confirmed by United Airlines that they were federal air marshals, off the airplane in handcuffs, according to some of these articles. So if you don't mind, let me play the rest of it and then we can discuss this.
And tower, Brickyard 3531. We have an engine started, ready to head to the gate.
Brickyard 3531, Echo 5, taxi via Alpha, cross runway 22, then Delta to the alley.
All right, Alpha, cross 22, Delta to Echo 5, Brickyard 3531. And we really appreciate all of your guys' help tonight. Thank you.
Not a problem. Nice job tonight. Brickyard 3531, just confirm the gate, Echo 5.
Correct, sir. Echo 5, Brickyard 3531. It's inside this alley here on the left-hand side, if I remember correctly.
Thank you. You remember correctly.
Been here 6 times in the last 2 months.
None more memorable than this.
Yeah, the last time I came out of medical emergency, so I think I just need to stop dating to come to Minneapolis.
Okay, I thought that was a little
not his
humorous
airport,
exchange
is
at
it?
the end.
Yeah.
So this is the what did he say? 6 times in the last 2 months, and 2
Yeah.
of these were
Emergencies.
emergencies,
Yeah, unusual
incidents.
situations.
Yeah. So so when I was first listening to this, I have to admit, I'm thinking, I think they're like really totally overreacting. Of course, that was before I knew some of the details as were revealed later in this audio tape, or not audio tape, audio recording. And so when I listened to it a little bit more and I started learning more of the details here, this guy, first of all, the flight crew, the captain, must be informed by the gate agent that, and I have to be careful about what I say here because I'm sure that some of this is not really for public consumption.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll try to be as generic and as basic as I can here. But needless to say, the captain is supposed to be informed that there are federal air marshals aboard your aircraft. And apparently in this case, and I'm not sure if it's the Federal Air Marshal's fault at this point or not, but somebody dropped the ball and didn't advise the captain that you have 2 Federal Air Marshals, with loaded weapons on board. So that's a problem, big problem right there. Number 2, if it's true what the flight attendant said, that this guy on his own asks for the manifest and then basically flashes his weapon. That's what she said. And without showing her his Federal Air Marshal badge, that's a big error. And as the captain here mentioned, his first officer is a federal flight deck officer. And so he knows what the standard operating procedure is for Federal Air Marshals because they go through that same training. He's saying, you would never do that, and he had no idea why he would do that. So everything is kind of suspicious. I kind of understand now locking down the cockpit and treating this as a more urgent situation, and then of course we know the outcome here. I have not seen. I tried to find some statements from the TSA or the I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they fall within the TSA or the what is it called, the Homeland Security Department, or what the actual controlling agency is for the Federal Air Marshal program. But I was kind of looking for some kind of an official statement acknowledging that this happened and explaining what they're going to do about it or whatever, but I didn't see anything as of yet, at least earlier today. So what do you all think of this? Do you think that, first of all, that it was appropriate for this air marshal to do, if what we hear from this audio tape is true, that he behaved properly? And do you think that the actions of the pilots and flight attendant were appropriate?
So you have to take this somewhat at face value based on what was said on the ATC recording here. But if that was the actual event as it happened between the air marshal and the flight attendant, put yourself in that flight attendant's shoes for a moment. You have no idea who this person is on your plane who has a weapon and demanding to see a list of passengers. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised she didn't react a little bit more to that, to be honest. Yeah.
And that point that he makes, or the statement that he makes, that apparently this air marshal is perturbed and irritated by the flight attendant bringing this to the attention of the pilots, kind of indicates to me that he understands that what he did was probably wrong, and he now is understanding that he's probably going to get in quite a bit of trouble, sure, if not fired completely. I don't know. I'll be interested to see what happens in this case.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the guy went outside of his procedures. Why on earth he would want to see the manifest? Why on earth he would pull out his weapon instead of showing his badge? I have no idea. Doesn't make any sense to me, unless the guy was trying to impress somebody, and that was a pretty stupid way to do it. Yeah, so it sounds to me like the crew behaved in a understandable and sensible manner, and I would probably have expected my crew to do exactly the same, unless I was absolutely certain that that something had happened. The procedures had obviously broken down, because you're quite right, Jeff, in what you say. The captain and possibly some others on the aircraft must be informed when there are armed people on the aircraft. So, something went badly wrong there. The only other thing I didn't quite understand was when they in the UK, I'm pretty sure they would have been put to an isolated area, and they would not have left that area. In fact, the aircraft would have been blocked in by vehicles until everything was sorted. And only when those guys were off the aircraft, and in fact, they may have even taken all the passengers off and searched them, because if there was any doubt that these were the only people on board with weapons, they would probably have secured everyone on board just in case there was a sleeper in them, if there was a suspected terrorist situation. And I don't think in the UK they would have been allowed to start up again and taxi to the gate. They would probably have got everyone off onto a bus, sorted everything out, and then towed that aircraft on at a different time. So I suspect, I don't know what airport this was. I didn't recognize
Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yeah, I don't know how big an airport that is.
It's a big airport.
Big.
Is it? So
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised that they didn't have slightly more rigorous procedures on the ground.
So in the just to clarify what we were talking about earlier in the chat room, Robert has pointed out that the air marshals are TSA agents under the Department of Homeland Security, which I'm looking up on just Wikipedia right now. I find their motto interesting. In English, it is the equivalent of unseen, unheard, unafraid.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Well, let's see.
It's written in Latin, so I don't know Latin.
Well, perhaps these guys didn't get the Latin training they needed.
Yeah, they failed at least 2 of those 3, I believe.
Yeah.
Perhaps 3 of 3. I don't know.
Perhaps 3 of 3.
Yeah.
Well done, Steph. That was good.
So as I said, they did remove these air marshals and handcuff them at that pad area, but apparently, as Nick mentioned, strangely, they decided to go ahead and leave everybody else on board and taxi back to a gate. So, I'm kind of surprised by that too, that they didn't take everybody off and search everybody and, treat this as a little bit more serious. But, I wasn't there. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
TSA does it again.
Yes, they do. And, well, perhaps we'll hear that at some other.
And as Mike in the chat room says, unseen, unheard, unemployed.
Good one, Mike. Good one. All right. Well, now it's time for the best part of the show, which, of course, is your great feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
Jeff, I notice that there are usually at least 3 best parts of the show.
They're all best.
We've discovered that not everyone listens to the entire show, so at whatever point they come in, they think they're getting the best
Perhaps
of what we have to offer.
Different adjectives.
Very cunning.
Right, yeah. But, you're the best host we have on the show from the UK.
From the UK.
On this particular show.
Yes. Yes. Just this once.
Yeah, I know. I need to come up with something better, I guess. The first one, first of all, everybody okay? Do we need to take a break or anything?
I'm good for right now.
No, I'm good.
Very good. Let's start off with George Nolly, another podcaster, hosts a wonderful show, another aviation show, Ready for Takeoff. And he wrote us and said, hope you're enjoying your time across the pond. Okay. He sent this quite some time ago. That was last month when I was across the pond at Riat and Farnborough. But he says, here's another story about what I suspect is aerotoxic syndrome. And this is a Business Insider article regarding a Spirit Airlines flight that had to divert after a horrible dirty socks odor filled the cabin and made passengers ill. And he said, I came across a study which he attached that goes into more detail. George. So what I propose here, Steph, have you been drinking at all or just water or what?
Just water.
No. Let's hope she's been drinking because
I'm thinking, do you have any IPAs?
This could be fun.
No.
Dang it. I wish I'd planned this better.
Yeah.
Let's look. Perrier.
Well, so I was thinking maybe if you had a few IPAs and then we could come back to this.
And phenyl alpha naphthylamine. The substituted diphenylamine. I took biology and biochemistry.
Well, maybe this wouldn't be a problem for you. Only
sober, I can read all of these words just fine.
Dang it. Oh, sober you can. Yeah. How about after you've had a few?
Not so well. Yeah.
So I guess what you're probably getting from me here is this attached PDF, the Hawking book, Crew Effects from toxic exposures on aircraft. No, I have not been drinking. is quite a detailed and scientific, and has lots of chemistry and chemicals and compounds and stuff included. A very technical article. So we are definitely not going to read this thing on the show. It's very many pages, but we'll put a link to this in the show notes. So if you are so inclined, you can read it yourself.
If you have a biology or biochemistry test coming up in the near future, this could be good studying material for you.
Exactly.
Enjoy. I hope.
And
I'm so glad I never have to take biochemistry ever again or use any of it in my day-to-day life.
Yeah, I've only taken one chemistry college level chemistry course, and that was my freshman year at Georgia Tech. And that was one of a number of courses I really struggled with and wondered how anybody could possibly understand any of that stuff.
General chemistry was fine. Regular biology was fine. Biochemistry, not so great.
This is just regular chemistry for me. It wasn't even biochemistry. It was like, doesn't
Hello.
work with my brain at all. Hey, Taco.
Nope, that's not Taco.
Oh,
No, that's Rusty.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. No problem. So the other article here that he included was this Spirit Airlines flight. They had to divert they were originally flying from New York to Fort Lauderdale. They had to divert to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, about halfway between the two, after passengers complained of burning throats and chest pains caused by a strange smell. The odor is reported to have resembled dirty socks. Rescue officials in Myrtle Beach who examined the plane were not able to confirm what caused the smell. Now, just as an aside, many times in my career as an airline pilot, and maybe even before when I was in the military flying the C-141, I have smelled that smell. But they've always told us, and I assumed that they weren't lying to us, that dirty sock smell had something to do with the air conditioning packs that do all the work to take the bleed air in and cool it down to a certain temperature, and provides for the cool air, hot air, and also provides for the pressurization of the aircraft. And that there's a device in these air conditioning packs that are like a water separator that obviously, the moisture in the air is collected, and there's some kind of a fabric or some kind of a material in there that can, if not changed out regularly, can get that kind of dirty socks smell. But now that I'm looking at all these aerotoxic syndrome episodes, or what they're claiming to be aerotoxic syndrome, they always include this smell of dirty socks. I'm wondering to myself, maybe I was exposed to some of these.
How have you been feeling today, Jeff?
Yeah, well, today I haven't smelled it in a while, actually, Steph, but my short-term memory is not there for some reason.
I'm sure
Very
it has
odd.
completely unconnected.
My long-term, I don't have any memory, actually, except flying other airplanes in the past. But anyway, that was just an aside. I'm just kind of
it's actually quite important. The description was originally, in my experience, coined with the warnings that came from Airbus concerning oil leaks in the engine, and they always referred to the smell as, quote, dirty socks. And I'm feeling that now people smell something strange and they're worried it might be these chemicals escaping from the engines and getting the air conditioning, are going to become so familiar with the correct terminology to use that might identify this as a toxic material coming from the engine. They're always going to call it dirty socks now. So, I would much rather people describe what they're actually smelling, because there might be a whole myriad of other causes. It could be the exhaust from the aircraft ahead if you're taxiing on the ground. It could be residue left over from de-icing. There are lots of things that might cause a slight smell that could get into the engines and thereby into the pressurization that might cause a strange smell. And if people immediately latch onto, oh, that's got to be dirty socks, so it's got to be aerotoxic, and I'm going to suffer neurological effects, then we're never really going to be able to identify the common smells you get on an aircraft from ones that are potentially very dangerous. So I wish people would move away from this term and start just describing the smell they're getting, rather than latching onto a particular phrase.
Also, how familiar are most people with the smell of dirty socks? Are most people smelling their dirty socks? So that's a little worrying.
Good point.
Putting that out there.
I remember when I was in, doing athletics in like high school and stuff. I know what the dirty socks smell like. And dirty tennis shoes.
I'm quite familiar. I have to. Some of the electrodiagnostic testing I performed is done on the feet or around the feet. Yeah.
Oops.
And being a marathon runner, of course, you wouldn't be the least bit familiar with dirty socks.
My feet don't smell. I don't know what you're talking about.
I've heard that phrase used a little bit differently, but yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right stuff. Well, according to NBC4 New York, aside from these passengers, about 7 to 10 out of 220, reporting chest and throat discomfort, some people were vomiting, and one woman was found unconscious. So
oh my God.
That's pretty serious. But again, a total of 220 passengers were on board the flight, and about 7 to 10 of them were transported to a local hospital for exposure to a possible unknown substance. Only one person was taken. Oh, and then Associated Press says, no, only one person was taken to the hospital. So I don't know how much of this is psychosomatic. I think maybe you could say that there is a possibility of that.
I'll tell you what, the power of suggestion and, vasovagal like responses to things that are unpleasant.
Bless you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Do happen. So who knows?
Because, if it's something that's in the pressurization system, it seems to me that it would be pretty well spread out through or distributed through the fuselage, right?
I wonder, but you wonder, were all those people sitting in the same place on the aircraft or nearby each other? If it was one person from way in the front of the cabin, a couple in the midsection and one way down the back, it seems unlikely that there should only be a few people affected, unless, again, we've kind of alluded to this earlier, those people were the more sensitive for various physiologic reasons or other chronic condition, medical condition reasons. Who knows?
Yeah, I think that's a quite likely explanation, Steph, because I don't know how I don't even know what that type of aircraft. Anyone help me there?
It was
an Airbus A380.
It's an Airbus. An Airbus.
All right. Well, if it's like my Airbus, then the recirculation system goes into a big tank. And then it's mixed with fresh air, and then it's recirculated to all parts of the aircraft simultaneously. So it's unlikely that one part of the aircraft would get it and not another.
Right.
That's what I thought too. All right. I think there was more.
It looks like they showed an A319 in the picture, but there were 220 passengers on board. That sounds more like a...
There's a bit right at the end, Jeff, which gives a few more details. But,
yeah, I actually meant to include another piece of feedback from George that deals with contaminated air, but not the type of incident that we're talking about here, the aerotoxic syndrome.
Kind of Captain Al contaminated air.
Well, maybe
not that contaminated,
but it does involve another chemical, but I'm not sure. I don't know what the chemical formula for methane gas is, but this one is actually.
I used to. I have to look it up.
CO2 levels in cockpit. So carbon dioxide, which I believe is it doesn't have any odor, and it you can't see it.
CH4. That's right. I knew that.
CH4. Okay.
Yeah.
So this article was released on August 8th, and it's from the Harvard University, harvard.edu news press release.
Is it in our feedback somewhere? Or is it just something?
It's in the regular feedback folder.
Okay. I don't know.
I thought I could have sworn that yesterday I drug this over and added it to that piece of feedback that's in our show notes folder, but apparently I didn't. That must have been one of those times that I was unconscious. I may have dreamed of it. I don't know. Anyway, I'm looking at it. It's in the feedback folder if you want to try to find it. It's toward the newer stuff. But commercial airline pilots were significantly better at performing advanced maneuvers in flight simulators when carbon dioxide levels on the flight deck, the cockpit, they put in parentheses, were 700 parts per million and 1,500 parts per million than they were at 2,500 parts per million, according to new research led by Harvard T.H. School of Public Health. The study indicates that CO2 levels directly affect pilots' flight performance. And Joseph Allen, assistant professor of exposure assessment science, well, I didn't know that that was a thing, and principal investigator of the study, said that flying is safe, no question. The entire flight experience is designed around a culture of safety first. Optimizing air quality on the flight deck must continue to be part of that safety equation. And we're talking to you, Captain Al. Previous research led by Allen and colleagues found that in office buildings, CO2 concentrations between 1,000 parts per million and 2,500 parts per million, levels once thought to be benign, negatively impact the cognitive function of employees. For the new study, they wanted to determine if higher CO2 levels on the flight deck would impair a pilot's ability to perform advanced maneuvers and manage emergency situations, such as single engine failure during takeoff. So anyway, they did the study, and you can read about it. We'll put this link in the show notes as well. You can read about the study, and they kind of came up with a parts per million point or threshold where they started noticing in their study in the simulators how the pilots started to not perform as well. And so George, when he sent this, he said, one more risk. He said, now it's not just leaks from the engines, it's from exhaling. So, because that's what we exhale.
So don't breathe.
Yeah, don't breathe. That's the solution, right? Wait a minute. No, that's not a good solution either, Steph.
No, I'm rethinking that one. Don't take that as advice.
Stick to the spines.
Yeah. Outside of my area of expertise. Yeah. What can I say?
I thought that was interesting. I'm not sure what they would do. I mean, like have, fresh oxygen dispensers. No, that can't be a good idea either. You don't want pure oxygen just spewing about in the cockpit.
Flammable.
One more thing to worry about, huh, Nick?
Yeah, but only for another 12 months.
Oh, yeah. So you're going, well, I don't care.
You've survived it so far.
You're on your own.
Yep. I'm all right, Jack.
Okay. Well, anyway, so thank you, George, for sending that in. George is focusing, can you tell, on bad air quality.
Yeah, he's found a little bandwagon, and I think he's going to sit on it for a while.
I think so. But we do appreciate all of it.
Certainly. Yeah.
And, while we're at it, I'm going to skip to number 6 because George is playing a prominent role in episode 337. George writes in, hi, Jeff, another great episode and really great plane tales. The story of flying the hump, he's referring to the plane tales regarding flying the hump, has been largely ignored by aviation aficionados. The crews certainly didn't get the public display of affection received by the bomber and fighter crews, despite suffering tremendous losses. I had the honor of interviewing a radio operator who flew these missions, and then he gives us a link to that episode number 198 of Ready for Takeoff podcast, Flying the Hump with Leland Stolberg. And he said, regarding flying a trip without a suitcase, okay, that was another topic I guess we discussed on that show. When I was a new 737 captain, I would leave my fully stocked suitcase at the United Airlines bag room at Stapleton, a room secured by a cipher lock. All I needed to do was go to the bag room, retrieve my flight bag and suitcase, head to the plane after the briefing. It was a great idea, he puts in all caps, until I went to the bag room on a 3-day trip and discovered that someone had stolen my suitcase.
Oops.
I flew the trip, of course, and discovered how to make underwear last at least 4 days. Inside, out, outside in, front to back, and commando. Thank you for sharing, George. And
I'm sure that was just a one-time occurrence.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the image in my mind of George going commando. It's not leaving me.
Nick, please don't go there.
No.
Family show, right? Here we go. See if we can find that quickly. And here it is.
Family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show.
Thank you, Matt.
So now, George, 3 separate pieces of feedback is enough for one show, huh? Let's
we'll share the love a little bit with some other folks.
Yeah, let's do that. How about with Keith? Keith is a new listener. He says, hi, Captain Jeff and crew. I'm a new APG listener. In fact, this past episode was only the second that I've listened to so far. I know I have a large backlog of episodes to catch up on. But in the meantime, the story about the Soviet ground effect vehicles from episode 333 reminded me of another story about flying in ground effect that I read recently. The story comes from the July 2017 newsletter put out by the Sikorsky Archives about how the first nonstop westbound transatlantic crossing came to be. Operating the world's first nonstop westbound transatlantic crossing on June 22nd, 1942, the Vought Sikorsky, I just made up a new company name, the Vought, I'm doing it again, the Vought Sikorsky VS-44A Excalibur flew from, is that Foynes? Is that the way you pronounce that place in Ireland?
I would have said so, but isn't that Vought Sikorsky?
Vought. Yes, I'm sorry.
Vought Sikorsky. I don't know. I'm only asking. I'm not saying.
Our American accent, we say Vought, right?
Vought. I would say Vought.
But yes, probably more properly.
If you've got a B there, would you say bought?
Yes, I'd say bought.
Bought.
Okay,
we just mangle the language, don't we?
Just let us continue to destroy it and degrade it. We're having a grand time of it.
Have fun. Marvelous.
Just don't let it bother you.
Carry on,
please. Okay. This boat from VS Company, VS-44A Excalibur, flew from Foynes, Ireland, a flying boat port on the River Shannon, to New York in 25 hours, 40 minutes with 16 passengers aboard.
16 whole passengers.
Yeah. The crew included pilot Charles Blair, co-pilot Bob Hickson, flight engineer Mike Doyle, navigator Harry Lamont, and radio man Mike McFarlane.
So
the
that's
crew nearly outnumbered
5 crew, 16 passengers.
Okay,
Got it.
well, they're not a lot of passengers, apparently. This record-setting flight was not a planned event. American Export Airlines inaugurated passenger service between New York and Foynes, Ireland on June 20th, 1942, with an uneventful eastbound crossing, which included a refueling stop at Botwood, Newfoundland, Canada, Newfoundland, I think, Canada. On the return flight to the LaGuardia Marine Terminal, the crew faced strong headwinds and fog that had socked in Newfoundland. The refueling point, assessing their grim fuel outlook, co-pilot Bob Hickson remarked at one point, "Glad this is a boat." To stretch mileage, Captain Blair brought the VS-44A down to skim just above the waves. Flying in ground effect reduced fuel consumption, but increased the danger of marine collisions.
Yeah, help that boat.
Yeah, I don't know. There were a lot of traffic out there. I don't know.
Maybe.
When the flying boat touched down on Flushing Bay, AEA publicists could claim the first Foynes, New York nonstop flight, only 45 minutes worth of fuel remained. That sounds like they had their reserve, huh?
Yep. Yeah. Sounds quite legal.
Yeah. So he goes on to say, the fact that the VS-44 was a flying boat may have eased the minds of the passengers a little as they were skimming over the water, but I can't imagine they would be too comfortable about it. Luckily, these days, it's easier to divert, but at the time, airfields were few and far between. I also have to give a shout out to my local air museum, the New England Air Museum, where the last surviving VS-44A, the Excambian, resides. If you ever find yourself up at Kilo Bravo Delta Lima Bradley International in Windsor Locks, it's definitely worth a stop in. I've been meaning to do that for many, many years, Keith. And welcome. I'm glad that you're here with us and part of our community and participating by sending us feedback. And that's a cool story.
Absolutely. I have a pronunciation grammar question for Jeff that's completely unrelated to anything we just talked about, though.
Oh, boy. Yeah, go ahead, Steph.
So the difference between COUGHT and COT, how do you pronounce those words?
I say them exactly the same.
Yeah. Okay.
Caught. But I know that our
I say them differently.
Representative from Britain would probably say caught.
I say caught and caught.
Oh, okay, so there is a little bit of more of a W in there toward the end. Caught.
That's a funny merger here in a lot of places, actually.
Yeah, I realized that. You know what? It was interesting when I went to mass at the town. What was it called? Bamberg. Nick, help me out. When you and
Nigel?
Yeah, Nigel were. Where were you when I was going to math? Oh, yeah, that's right. You were in a pub.
Yes, we were. We were doing our own. Saying our own prayers.
it was an interesting experience for me because I, being, I'm sure, the only American in the congregation of worshipers, that, and I'm sure that that the people in front of me were probably like turning around, seeing who this awful accented American person is, because I was obviously not pronouncing these English words that we share the same way. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, there's a reason why they spell certain words with double vowels and everything else. It is to be pronounced differently, but we good old Yanks, we just kind of simplified things, and I'm not going to talk for all of us, but I apparently simplified things quite a bit, and whether it's spelled one way or another, I tend to pronounce it the same. So I thought it was interesting, and I started thinking to myself, maybe I should work on pronouncing things a little bit more differently.
Nah, there's supposed to be variation. You
Yeah.
can't help your accent.
Yeah.
So what makes you you? I mean, it's a combination of your upbringing, where you live, how you integrate with the people around you, and your accent changes depending on where you live anyway, I think, because you do tend to alter your accent to fit in more. So,
or stop saying things that you get made fun of for.
Yeah, well, exactly right.
Yeah.
Just so you fit in, and
That
you're
never
not
happens
so
with me.
obvious that you. Yeah. So when
No, but
lived in
I find all
Australia-
that stuff fascinating. I really do. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
So when I lived in Australia for 3 years, I picked up a lot of the local I can't say it.
That word, COQ.
That word with Steph just said.
COLOQ.
Yeah,
Colloquial.
colloquialisms.
That's a hard word to bring.
And when I came back to the UK, everyone laughed at me because they said, "Oh, you sound like a damned Australian." But funnily enough, I never got Australian enough for the Australians to think I sounded like an Australian.
You lost both ways.
Yeah, I kind of moved to some halfway house in between.
And nobody wanted to claim you.
No.
Oh.
Oh. It's a sad
Anyway,
story.
fascinating stuff. If you like linguistics, check out Lexicon Valley podcast.
Lexicon Valley.
No interest, no financial interest related to that podcast at all, but I like listening to that one.
I'll have to check it out.
Oh, and
Hows
one
and
of my
whys
favorites
of language.
is the Allusionist.
I was not aware of
which
that one
is
either. So
Another one.
I will check.
Not illusionist, but allusionist.
Yes, exactly right.
Okay. All right. Well, moving on back to aviation. Let's see. Number 3, Stephen. Again, commenting about our episode 333. It must have been significant for a lot of people.
Well below the 50%.
We're just
Yeah.
catching up to the feedback that was sent in after 333. How many weeks ago? About
must
4 weeks
be
ago.
what it is. Yeah. And everybody, we do appreciate your feedback, and that we get so much of it now that we do sadly have to tell you that we're never going to get to all of it, and we hope you're not upset with us if you have sent us feedback in the past and we have never gotten a chance to talk about it on the show. Now, many of you sending in feedback are new listeners and haven't listened to a lot of the previous 330 some odd shows that we've done over time. And a lot of times what is a new subject of interest for you may be something that somebody else thought was an interesting question to ask us. And so you'll find, if you listen to all the shows, that we cover several topics several times. And lately we've decided that, if it's something that we've talked about in the recent past, then we're probably going to skip that one. So, and I do my best to answer those kind of questions from people on a one-to-one basis if I can. I don't have all the time in the world to do that, but I'll say, hey, love it, great question, but we've tackled this a couple times in the past, and so we're probably not going to talk about it again on the show. So with that said, don't let that discourage you from sending us feedback, because we really do appreciate it. And honestly, it's a very large portion of our show and what makes our show unique. All right. Stephen says, I love the podcast and always looking forward to the next episode. He's just finished podcast 333 and might have an answer for the audio feedback from Bill discussing the helicopter flying under the Golden Gate Bridge. My understanding was that no fixed-wing aircraft were supposed to fly under bridges in the United States, but helicopters were allowed to. Maybe the helicopter had a waiver because it was most likely flown by San Francisco Helicopters out of San Francisco International Airport, which is a tour company that some people say TOR, I say tour, company that routinely flies under the Golden Gate Bridge. A picture of the helicopter is attached. I probably have a picture of it diving toward the bridge to fly under it, but I couldn't find it at the moment. And I'm supposing that Stephen is giving me permission to use this beautiful picture of this helicopter and share it with you folks listening to the show. So we'll put that in the show notes so you can see it yourself. Very nice work, by the way. Anyway, he finishes off by saying, keep up the good work, and I love the information and the fun that is had on the podcast. And thank you, Stephen, in San Jose, California.
Now, Stephen has a picture of one flying under the helicopter. Stupid me. One flying under the bridge. I would really like to see it because, I mean, admittedly, it was only a cursory search, but Google Images usually pulls up an awful lot of pictures that you want to see. And I have Googled flying under the Golden Gate Bridge, and I cannot find a single image of an aircraft actually. Now, a picture of a helicopter close to the bottom of the bridge, but not one actually flying under it. So I'm going to say, if you've got a picture, Stephen, I would love to see it because I have yet to see physical evidence of someone actually doing that. So I'm not yet convinced because I'm an old cynic.
You're a doubting Thomas.
You're a curmudgeon.
Always like to, and I would also like to know what semper paratus means.
Always
paratus.
Paratus.
Always a parrot?
Oh,
no.
I don't know. Perhaps somebody in the chat room, if you know Latin, Paratus.
It's ready. Always
ready. Oh, okay.
It is the Coast Guard official motto.
Oh, really? Oh, excellent.
Very good. And by the way, he includes a link to a URL that I assume is his webpage, and that's mantaganiphotos.com. Probably mispronouncing that, but again, we'll have all of this, including that helicopter picture and that link to what I assume is Stephen's website. Maybe we can peruse that and find that picture.
Liz
but Stephen,
he's got a lot of aviation photographs on his website. It's a lovely looking website, actually.
Good stuff.
What does Liz say?
Really she said prepared, which makes more sense with the Latin root as opposed to ready.
Okay. Always prepared. That sounds like the Boy Scout motto, right? Or no, that's be prepared.
Be prepared.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Stephen. And now we'll move on to Steve. Yeah, it's confusing, isn't it? Steve Hurst came across this video on C-Link below of a British Airways A380 crew operating an arrival into San Francisco. And then he gives us a YouTube URL, a video URL. As you will notice from the video, the first officer is operating the aircraft during the approach, and then on finals at around 1,000 feet. The procedure is for the pilot flying to call out the approach. Okay, let me reread that again. As you will notice from the video, the first officer is operating the aircraft during the approach, and then on finals at around 1,000 feet, the procedure is for the pilot flying to call out that the approach is stable, and then he hands over control to the captain, who then lands the aircraft. I understand from other similar videos that I've seen before that this is the way, this way of handing over control in the final approach is standard operating procedure for British Airways. So in this example, on the return leg, the captain will operate the aircraft to the final approach, and at the 1,000-foot call, the first officer will take control and perform the landing. From what I understand, this is not the norm, and for most other airlines, one pilot will operate the complete leg of the journey, including the landing. Then on the return leg, the other pilot gets his or her turn to operate the aircraft for the complete leg, including performing the landing. I'm not wishing to suggest that the British Airways way of doing it is wrong, but I do wonder why they do it differently than most other airlines. Does it matter either way? Thanks as always for putting on a great show, Steve Hurst. I'd never heard of this, to be honest. I just assumed that everybody did it the way I guess most of us do, and that is if it's your leg, your flight, you do everything unless something happens. For instance, the first officer, it's his leg, his flight, and then weather at your destination kind of drops below a certain minimum, and it's gotten to the point where the captain has to do the approach and landing because of the low
Or
visibility.
if it's at an airport that's a captain only landing, I know
Right.
there's
But if that's the case, then of course we would have known that and
Sure.
planned for that and say, you know what, let me take this leg because I'm going to have to land there. So
Sure.
why don't I just fly the whole thing? But there have been a couple of times in my career where it was a FO's leg. We didn't really expect the weather to get worse. We thought it would improve. The TAFs kind of indicated that, and then of course Murphy's Law. You get there and they're doing low visibility approaches, and you go, hey, sorry, hate to take the landing away. I'll pay you back at some other point in the trip, but it looks like I'm going to need to perform the approach and landing. So what do you have to say, Nick? Is this something that you've heard of before?
Well, I've heard of it, and it is very much a British Airways procedure. I have a feeling, and this is just off from my memory, that it's been fairly long ingrained after some accidents that they had, I don't know, back in the 60s, probably British European Airways, and they adopted this as a safety procedure. And the way it kind of works is that the guy who is not going to land the airplane sets up the approach and flies it. Either, I guess he could hand fly, I don't see why not, or using the automatics until the aircraft is stabilized on the approach and the guy who's going to land it is visual. And then he says, I'm visual, I have control, and he physically takes over the aircraft to perform the landing. Now, either pilot can have either role, so they do it in turns. The only thing that I have, because I've never done it, so I can't really comment on how successful it is, but BA is a very safe airline. They've got a great accident record, and they've done it for years. So there's no doubting that it's a safe procedure. There's no doubt about that at all. But I personally think to myself, I'm having to ask this guy to set up the approach. If I don't like the way he's setting up the approach or the way and there are lots of ways of setting up an approach. There's lots of different ways of adjusting the aircraft, particularly when you're using the autopilot, how the aircraft captures and maneuvers down the approach. You can use vertical speed, you can use angle of approach. In our aircraft, you can use a variety of methods. I like the way I do it. And if I had a guy setting me up an approach who's doing it using different settings, I might not feel entirely comfortable. But I guess if I'm going to land the aircraft visually, I can always just take all the automatics out and just do it visually. But on the other hand, if it's a slightly marginal visibility day, I might not want to have everything taken out, but I would want to have the airplane set up the way I like it when I take control. So, and if the guy's not doing it just the way you like, what do? You start telling him how much rate of descent you want to use, what speed you want at what point, so that when you do take control, the aircraft is perfectly as you would have set it up yourself. So that's the questions in my mind. I'd love to have some feedback from a BA crew explaining how it all works. I mean, I've watched the video. I've seen how it works. It flies it, sets it up on the ILS, and when the other guy is happy, he just says visual I have control and takes over and lands it. But I'd like to know what happens if you do a go around. Who then flies the go around? Who monitors it, etc.? How does it hand back control to the guy who's on the instrument?
You have the airplane go around.
Yeah, exactly. So
I don't want to land. It's back to you.
Yeah, exactly. So I do have lots of questions in my mind, and I'd love to enter a discussion with someone who does this. So if there are any Big Bird pilots out there, please.
Wait a minute, I don't think it's Big Bird.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well,
by the way,
that's
there's
right.
not a bad explanation on Skybree. Those of you who aren't familiar, there's a great library of aviation procedures called Skybree.aero. And it's in there. And I did spend the afternoon trying to read it, but quite honestly, it sent me to sleep. So it is It is long and rather tedious. All about, you know, who does what and what happens when you do this, that, and the other. And I was getting really confused as to who was pilot monitoring, who was monitoring and flying, who was PICMA. What the hell is that? I was getting a bit, oh, it's too hard. I think I'll have a Ziz instead.
It does sound rather complicated to me. But
yeah, I must admit, I like to fly the approach. I like to do the landing when it's my turn. And apart from that, if you're going to do a nice bit of hand flying, you need to do that, because I think that's where the skill is, and that's how you remind yourself how to hand fly the airplane. You fly it all the way down, from a few thousand feet or even higher, and you do the landing, letting someone else do that, and you just take control at 500 feet or so. In my mind, kind of defeats the object.
I tend to agree.
So for all of you British Airways pilots out there listening, let us know.
Please, yes. Love to enter a conversation about it or a discussion.
Yes. Absolutely. All right. Well, very good. Now it's time for the very, very, very best part of the show. And of course, that is the old pilot's plain tales. Take it away, old pilot.
The old pilot's plain tales. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Cathay 780. Mayday is derived from the French term medi, meaning help me. Its use in aviation is attributed to a senior radio officer of Croydon Airport, Frederick Stanley Cockford, who first coined it in 1923. Such is the reliability of modern aircraft, it's quite likely that the vast majority of pilots will go through their entire flying career without ever
Hello, everyone. Little technical difficulties here. My Chrome browser, which is hosting the Hangout on Air, decided to crash. Yay. Okay, let me get everything back going, and I'll start the plain tales from the beginning. Everybody hear me at this point, I hope. All right. Well, that's all changed. You can hear me, right? Yeah, I think so. Love technology.
You broke it?
So no, I was trying to bring up the plain-tail screen graphic, and then when it was on that window, I started getting the beach ball, and I'm going, uh-oh, that's not good, because I'm not going to touch anything else, because this is the browser that has the Hangout running, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared, and I had the message, we had to shut down, or Chrome, shut down on its own for some reason. Do you want to restart? Yeah, I do.
Nah, just let it go.
Yeah. And that immediately Liz said, we're not hearing the PT. And I go, I know.
If something happened, I go away to get a beer and it all crumbles around.
Well, so that was a great plane tale, Nick.
Yeah, it was shorter than
pretend like
usual.
we've heard
Succinct.
What?
Succinct.
Okay. Let's see here. Should I try to do the screen again, or should I just...
Can everyone else still see us? Yeah, I guess. Okay.
Good. I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Try it. See what happens.
Okay. Let me try this. It's not just me. It's my actual equipment that is experiencing weird stuff.
That's what she said.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to... You see the plane's tail screen? Well, sort of. I'll go full screen with
I
that.
see, all of your screen.
Yeah. All right. So that means I should do this and present. And it was at this point that I lost everything last time. Okay. And I'm going to do this. Boom. And now, here we go.
The old pilot's plane tails. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Cathay 780. Mayday is derived from the French term medi, meaning help me. Its use in aviation is attributed to a senior radio officer of Croydon Airport, Frederick Stanley Cockford, who first coined it in 1923. Such is the reliability of modern aircraft, it's quite likely that the vast majority of pilots will go through their entire flying career without ever uttering a mayday call. It's only used in the most dire of circumstances, but on the 13th of April 2010, such a situation had developed on the Airbus A330 of Captain Malcolm Waters and his first officer David Hayhoe. This is their story. They were operating Cathay Flight 780 from Surabaya in the Java region of Indonesia back home to Hong Kong's Jet Black Cock with pretty much a full load, a total of 322 souls on board. Their aircraft was first flown in 1998, less than a year after the handover of Hong Kong, when the island's sovereignty was passed from the United Kingdom to China. When the crew climbed on board, it was parked on stand number 8. Looking at their paperwork, they would probably have spotted the notice to airmen that had been issued by the airport relating to their stand. It said in the usual jumble of abbreviations and poor English, Parking stand 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, operation, but caution advised due to work in progress, remarks, extension and closed pipe fuel hydrant system. From this, it would have appeared that some work was being done on the stands and care should be taken. In fact, Surabaya had been enlarging their apron for around a year, and some of the work involved extending the refueling circuit that supplied fuel to the stands, including the one where Cathay 780 was parked. For those unfamiliar, most modern airports supply large aircraft like the A330 with fuel through an underground pipe system from storage tanks on the edge of the airfield. The truck seen under the wing connected to the aircraft is little more than a mobile pump, correctly termed a hydrant dispenser, that takes fuel from a connection buried in the apron and passes it up to the fuel tanks. As the refueler pumped the additional 24.4 tons of fuel that the aircraft would require for the 5-hour flight, he didn't question the fact that the flow rate was unusually slow. Nor did he investigate the increase in differential pressure reading that he was getting or that the fuel filters in his fuel truck had required several unscheduled replacements. He did, however, stop refueling on occasions because of an odd vibration that was occurring in the delivery hose, which he put down to trapped air. When he finished loading the fuel, he performed a visual and water check on a fuel sample and noted that it was bright and clear. Captain Waters accepted the aircraft and with his first officer prepared it for flight. They started both their Rolls-Royce Trent 700 engines and taxied out. It was First Officer Hayhoe's leg, so he performed the takeoff and climbed it up to their cruise height. It was during the climb that the crew first spotted some slight engine pressure ratio fluctuations. It's a measure of engine thrust on the number 2 engine, but they were small, only plus or minus 0.015 around the EPA target. EPA is a measure of the ratio of total pressure exiting the engine divided by the total pressure entering it. The number 1 engine also had some fluctuations, but within an even smaller range. They leveled their aircraft at flight level 390, and a little while later a warning appeared on the ECAM page titled Eng 2 Control System Fault, with the advice note, Eng 2 Slow Response. Contacting their operations center by sat phone, they asked for technical advice. They discussed the options, but agreed that apart from the EPA fluctuations, everything appeared normal, and so they cleared the warning and continued towards Hong Kong. Just over an hour later, after a slight turn, Flight 780 adjusted their cruising level to flight level 380. The correct semicircular height for their new heading. As they started their short descent, the ECAM again warned them of an engine 2 control system fault, this time with the additional note to avoid rapid thrust changes. The crew turned on the engine anti-ice to see if this had an effect on the fluctuating EPA, but the gauge continued to oscillate. A further call was made to maintenance control, and Captain Waters expressed his concern as the EPA fluctuations on the number 2 engine had increased. The discussion came down to the fact that the number 2 engine hadn't been worked on at Surabaya, and the slight fluctuations in the number 1 engine might be because it was compensating for the changes in the number 2 engine. The avoid rapid thrust changes note was probably related to a pressure probe that controlled the movable inlet guide vanes near the front of the engine that helps smooth the airflow through the compressors. Since the number 1 engine still appeared to be running well, as before, the advice was to continue to Hong Kong, where the engineers would replace the number 2 engine fuel metering unit. An hour and a half later, Flight 780 arrived into Hong Kong airspace. Hong Kong was on runway 07 left. The wind was 9 knots across with good visibility, a few clouds at 600 feet and scattered cloud at 1800 feet. With a southerly wind coming over the high ground near the airport, significant wind shear was forecast for both 07 left and 07 right, but no actual alerts had been given. As they began their descent, the engines throttled back, and a short while later, another ECAM warning sounded, and a smell of burning mixed with ozone invaded the flight deck from the cabin conditioning system. This time, the fault read Engine 1 Control System Fault, shortly followed by Engine 2 Stall. The situation had just escalated from an annoyance to a full-blown emergency. An engine stall is a disruption of the airflow going through the engine. The fuel continues to burn, so the temperature rises quickly, in this case from around 400 degrees centigrade to well over 700, and the thrust the engine produces is negligible. The conversation on the flight deck was calm. Captain Waters identified the fault. Okay, engine 2 stall. His first officer replied, confirmed. I have control, ECAM actions. Okay, thrust lever number 2, confirm? Confirm. Idle. The captain continued. Check. Engine 2 parameters checked. We've got fuel flow. We've got EGT, rotation. You fly. The FADEC, the Full Authority Digital Engine Control Computers on modern jet engines, are programmed to recognize and deal with various common types of failure, and a stall, while serious, is usually cleared by just pulling the throttle back and allowing the airflow in the engine to smooth out. Their descent continued, and realizing the seriousness of their situation, the captain put out a pan call. Hong Kong, Cathay 780, pan, 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 pan. We are operating engine 2 at idle thrust at the moment, but operations normal apart from that. However, realizing that they had problems on both engines, Captain Waters made a wise decision. Hong Kong, Cathay 780 pan. If we could just get priority thanks, we would like to track short as much as possible. Waters was already eyeing up his distance to the runway against his height, and just in case the worst occurred and both engines failed, he was ensuring that he could still make the airfield. However, at the moment he had one engine with a minor fault, and the other might clear its stall and become available, so he was just being cautious. He briefed his cabin crew on the problem, and with First Officer Hey-Ho programming the approach, they both had their hands full. They also discussed what they would have to do if they needed to go around from the approach. Hong Kong was built on the edge of Cheplackcock Island, which rises to over 3,000 feet, just 4 miles south of the runways. The captain briefed it. Yep, a quick rebrief here. The engine out go-around in case of a go-around. It's climb on track to Sierra Mike Tango VOR, right turn to Rover, right turn onto a heading of 190 or a track of 190. Maximum speed is 220 knots until we are either on the 190 or above 2,500 feet. On a normal go-around, the crew would be faced with a track that wends between the peaks that surround Kowloon at nearly 3,300 feet, but a go-around with one engine inoperative is more difficult. That track must turn south to follow the narrow but safe channel between the islands. At this point, in accordance with Cathay Pacific standard procedures, Captain Waters took control of the aircraft, and his first officer assumed the pilot monitoring duties. By now they had reached 8,000 feet and were around 300 knots, some 45 miles south of the airfield, when the situation took a turn for the worst. The ECAM warned, Engine 1 stall. Waters called for the ECAM actions, which required them to put their only remaining engine to idle to clear the stall. The speed started to bleed back, and Waters started a descent, holding them at a gliding speed. He tried advancing engine number 2, but it remained firmly stuck at a very low idle speed. He tried engine number 1, but that also failed to respond. Hey-Ho spoke over the radio. Approach. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Cathay 780 has engine 1 and engine 2 stall. Currently, we require a lower descent, maintaining 8,000. They worked the problem, but their conversation with the approach controller said it all. Cathay 780, your position is 14 miles south of Soko. Roger. Cathay 780 Mayday. At the moment, we are heading 330 on a long base, trying to extend our glide as best as possible, and we are just trying for relights. Advancing the number 1 thrust lever, they got the engine up to about 3/4 power, 70% N1, but there it stuck, regardless of whatever they did with the lever. In an attempt to recover the number 2 engine, they shut it down and performed a relight, but it remained at a near useless sub-idle power setting. All whilst this was going on, the crew were handling multiple warnings as systems came offline, starts failed, and they had more engine stall messages. They were monitoring their position, making calls to the cabin crew and air traffic. Captain Waters even had time to speak to his passengers. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain speaking. As you no doubt, another warning chime sounded, may be aware, we have a small problem with our engines. You might feel some vibrations, and we've been given priority to land, but I do stress that it's very important that you remain seated with your lap straps fastened and follow the directions from your cabin crew. We are probably about 6 or 7 minutes from touchdown, and we are just maneuvering now for landing and descending. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. With one engine stuck and the other useless, at least they had some power, but Waters was in a dilemma. If he stayed high, thinking he might lose number 1, and it remained running, he might overshoot the runway. If he came in lower and it failed, he might fall short and crash into the undershoot. He trod a careful middle path, putting what flaps he could down and lowering the gear, but ensuring he stayed a bit high as he closed on the runway. His number 1 engine was still stuck at a moderately high power setting, and that was becoming a problem as he needed to slow and get more flap out. With his gear down and full speed brake, couldn't slow the aircraft to get all the flap he wanted, so warnings started. Too low, terrain, and pull up. With the runway in sight, Waters weaved his aircraft in a zigzag, trying to lose height and speed, but at 3 miles, he was still doing 230 knots. Although they didn't voice their concerns, their talk was very professional. Both pilots must have realized that since their only remaining engine was stuck at less than full power, a go-around wasn't really an option. Captain Waters landed his aircraft at a ground speed of 231 knots, about 100 knots above the normal landing speed, with only the first stage of flap deployed. He would probably happily admit it wasn't his finest landing. They bounced and scraped the number 1 engine pod, but then settled onto the gear. He applied maximum manual braking and brought his aircraft to a halt with 1,000 feet of the 12,500-foot runway left. But he, his crew, and his passengers were safe and well. With his brakes reaching 1,000 degrees centigrade and fires starting around the gear, he elected to evacuate the aircraft. There were inevitably some injuries, but the worst was a broken ankle, the majority being abrasions and bruises. Waters walked through the empty cabin with his senior cabin crew member to ensure that everyone had safely left before taking to the slides himself. He was the last to leave the aircraft. The investigation revealed that the fuel loaded onto Cathay Flight 780 in Surabaya was contaminated with super-absorbent polymer spheres. The spheres came from the monitoring filters in the hydrant dispenser, which refueled Cathay 780. The filters had reacted to salt water that had been allowed to contaminate the refueling circuit during the work that was being done on the apron. The sticky spheres traveled into the tanks of the A330 and eventually lodged in the fuel metering valve, which controls the fuel flow into the engine. They eventually caused the valves to seize in their final positions. In addition, the sap spheres were found in the fuel-operated actuators of the inlet guide vanes of both engines, and they were bad enough to seize the actuators of the number 2 engine. The problem of fuel contamination at Surabaya was put down to insufficient flushing of the fuel pipes following their recommission, and also to a lack of alertness on the part of the refueling personnel. These issues have been dealt with. This was the first of this type of fuel contamination to ever occur in the civil world, but in light of the lessons learned, Airbus revised its QRH to include a section on suspected fuel contamination for Rolls-Royce, Pratt & Whitney, and General Electric engines. Captain Waters and First Officer Hayhoe were commended for their actions in bringing their aircraft safely home, and for the excellent crew coordination, handling skills, and technical knowledge that they displayed. In addition, in March 2014, the pilots were awarded the Polaris Award by the International Federation of Airline Pilots Associations for their heroism and airmanship.
Wow, another interesting plane tale.
Yeah.
Best part of the show.
Bestest.
Yeah, I
200 and how many knots do you land at?
231.
Wow.
And that's what he landed at. So, yeah, impressive speed. I mean, the aircraft will fly down to, I guess its approach speed was probably 135. So he was really working hard to get the airplane onto the runway at that kind of speed.
Sure.
Because, it was not easy for him. So I have to applaud him for being able to do that. And I also have to applaud the aircraft for, at that speed, being able to stop. That's pretty impressive. I mean, he managed to get the running engine that was stuck at about 70% into reverser because the other engine was useless. There were lots of aspects of this emergency that I couldn't include just because I didn't have time. I just have to take my hat off to the professionalism of the crew. When you read the full transcript, they were really on it. They were excellent. Their procedures, their discussions, everything was just like the best demonstration simulator you've ever seen. I was really impressed.
Nice.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a lovely display of skill.
Well, and I think that these plane tales are lovely displays of your storytelling skill.
Oh, you're very kind. I have to thank Hong Kong Ant for that suggestion, because I had not, despite the fact that I fly that type of aircraft, and we usually get a lot of cross-fertilization between incidents, I had not heard of this one. So,
never heard of it either.
Yeah, appreciate Hong Kong Ant's suggestion, and particularly about this type of fuel contamination, which came from a system within the hydrant dispenser, which broke down because it was contaminated by the salt water that had got into the fuel gallery, and then the contents of the filter escaped. These polymer things, which sound a bit like the stuff you've got in your baby's nappies that soak up all the wet. It sounds like a similar sort of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, but it was there to capture contaminants, but it sounded like the salt water was sufficient for it to turn into something else. And when you see the electron microscopic images of these particles, they're like those tiny little plastic beads that everyone's worried about getting into the ocean. It's just like clouds of those, but they were very tacky, sticky. They stopped all the moving parts in the fuel system were starting to stick together, and there was the problem. The crew really had, and there had been no other incidents before. Perhaps one with a military aircraft, but not sure. Certainly none that they knew about that gave them any clue as to what was happening, really. So it was a well-handled emergency, I thought.
Definitely.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, moving on. We have about half an hour, maybe a little bit less left in the show, so we're going to try to push on and try to tackle as many more pieces of feedback in the feedback folder as we can. Let's do 14. Jay Johnson writes, "Hi, Captain Jeff and the APG crew. My name is Jay Johnson. I've been listening to you all for a while now. I've always been a fan of aviation, and because of getting a glimpse of an airline pilot's life through your podcast, I started flight school at a flight academy to become an airline pilot. Yay!
Excellent.
Well
I just passed my private pilot written exam. More yay!
Woohoo.
And am going to be soloing next week." Now, he sent this on the 11th of August. It's now the 23rd. So I bet that he's done his solo already.
So we'll just say congratulations.
Congratulations. You are now a...
Everyone remembers their first solo.
Yes.
Everyone remembers their first time, don't they?
Yes. Yes, they do.
I remember my first time. I don't have many memories of my first solo.
Okay. Moving on. And I wanted to thank you all for inspiring pilots of all ages. He says, I'm 23, and for setting an excellent example for the aviation community. Because of you, I found out how rewarding, challenging, and just plain fun, pun intended, plain, Plane, fun, aviation is. And you guys rock. Yay, thank you. Also, I've been donating on Patreon for a couple months now to help support things.
Thank you.
This was right. So he said that he hadn't heard his name. I think I mentioned this on the last show, that somebody had said, hey, I'm a new patron. I didn't hear any acknowledgement regarding that. And he said, I haven't heard my name on the coffee fund, but then he said it could be part of my 50% error rate. But I'm not petty. I'm just a student pilot who one day hopes to share the skies with fantastic aviators like you. And so again, just to reiterate what I said on the last show, I believe that if you are a new patron or you've made a contribution to the coffee fund in any way, and I haven't mentioned it on the show, please send me an email and let me know, because it is definitely not, it's probably just an oversight on my part, not intentional at all. Unless it's like one of you people that I don't like your names and whatever, so.
Jeff does play favorites, and
favorites.
Yeah.
You know me.
I'd just like to say that we were all in exactly the same place as you are right now, Jay. And, we all managed to get through, and we have absolutely no doubt that if your heart's in it, you'll be sitting on a big cockpit one day and having the time of your life. So good luck.
I've heard somebody say in the past many, many times, if there's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely.
Sounds like you have the will to do it, Jay.
I also like that he insinuates that, our 50% accuracy rate is in part due to the 50% error rate of our listeners.
Oh, I do like
listening
that.
error.
Yeah, good point.
So we don't have to blame ourselves completely.
No.
Oh,
This is shared blame. Thank you, Jay.
It's all the dumbos out there listening to us. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not us. We're not making big mistakes. It's you all.
No,
listening
exactly
to right now.
It's not me.
Yeah,
it's
and
you.
everything else is fake news.
Exactly.
All right. You ever heard of this guy? His name is Pip.
Who?
He does a Pip. I don't know what that stands for. PIP. Person in
Pilot in potty.
Pilot in potty.
Something like
Pilot.
that.
Okay, well, anyway, we could come up with all kinds of fun things, couldn't we? He sent us some audio. Oh, by the way, Pip does a wonderful podcast, another podcast promotion here today. He is the host of the Plane Safety Podcast, and you should check it out if you haven't yet. And let's take a listen to what Pip has to say.
Hi, gang. It's Pip here with just a brief comment on a story that you guys covered, a couple of episodes ago now, regarding... It was either Air China or China Eastern 747 that missed the runway, did a brief touch and go on the grass, and managed to damage some airport property signs or lighting or something in the process. And then they subsequently, when questioned by local police or airport authorities remained very tight-lipped. These guys didn't want to say anything. And I just wanted to say that you know what, I kind of understand where they're coming from. And I in a similar position, I might be quite reluctant as well to talk to anybody without at least first maybe talking to my boss, fleet manager, or the DFO, or some sort of legal advice. I guess it's sort of like when you have a minor road traffic accident and you're swapping insurance details. You know, the first rule is you don't admit liability. You let the insurance companies sort it out. You know, if you're in a foreign country, perhaps it's not your native language, and you don't know the implications, the legal implications of what you might say, then perhaps it is wise not to say too much. I remember at my company at SafeJets a few years back, we had an incident at one of the Moscow airports. We had a gear up landing. It was actually a really nice example of a planned emergency. Everything turned out really well in the end. But in the process of this gear up landing, the guys, the captain of whom I know very well, they did damage some airport property. They slid off the side of the runway and bust some lights and some airport signs. And in the immediate aftermath, they were descended upon by the Russian airport authorities and were presented with a number of forms and paperwork with which they were harassed or pressured quite strongly to sign. And very wisely, the captain said, no, I'm not going to sign any of this because A, I don't know what the heck it says, and I don't know the implications, and I don't know what I'm letting myself in for, which is a very savvy move in the end. As it turned out, these forms were, if he had signed them, were saying that he admitted full liability for the incident and all the damage caused to the airport. So he was going to be personally responsible in somewhere like, you know, or at least some parts of the world, should we say, you don't want to admit responsibility for stuff like that. You could end up in a very unfortunate position. So I just wanted to make the comment that I kind of appreciate and understand where that Chinese pilot was coming from, and perhaps in a similar situation, myself or you or anyone else might feel the same way. Anyway, that's it for now. Take care, all. See you soon.
Thanks, Pip. And you didn't even mention your show, Plane Safety.
No, and it is a great
shameless
show,
yes,
albeit a little infrequent.
Yeah.
I thought he put out an episode every week.
If only.
You're thinking of a different show, I think.
I'm thinking of us, I think. Sorry. I'm sure he'll have someone. I'm sure he'll have a new episode out sometime in the next decade. So,
yep,
for
sooner
sure.
or later, new plane safety episode.
When they come out, we love them.
We do.
We do. They're always informative and entertaining, for sure. So the only thing I wanted to say here is that when we talked about this and the fact that the ops people were saying that they weren't getting much information, I'm not sure what kind of information they were asking of these China Airlines. Wasn't it China or China Freight or whatever?
Yeah, it was
Freight,
but yes.
So I'm not sure exactly if they were very basic questions about, hey, did you like land off part of the runway, and do you know if you took out any of our equipment, or if it was more in depth? Now, I agree that anytime there's an incident or accident, we're always reminded by our union representation is don't say anything, don't make any statements until you have a chance to talk to somebody, a representative from the union. You know, even if you are just absolutely positive that it wasn't any fault of yours, that you might say something the wrong way, and we're here to represent you. You need to kind of, you know, cool off and think about it before you just start, you know, spouting off stuff. So, I mean, I agree with you there. You want to make sure that you have all your thoughts collected before you start making any statements or signing papers, as Pip mentioned in his experience, how, you know, the person fortunately did not sign the papers admitting.
No, Captain Jeff, just sign right here on the line.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
It's going to be fine.
Right,
just
sign. You want
right
my
here.
autograph? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're a hero. Sign here.
Yeah. So what do you think, Nick?
Well, in my license, this is my ATPL license, I have this. And it's a little fold-out
receipt
thing.
Yes.
It's like a receipt.
Right. It was how much it cost me, which was given to me by my union. And I've had it in there for my entire career. And from the first day they put it, and it is our union's little memo about what to do if you have an accident. It may seem stupid, but actually the last thing in your mind is going to be your conduct when all the adrenaline's coming down and you realize you're safe and it's going to be okay. Actually, that is the time you're most likely to make a big mistake if you're in a foreign country and there's still some explanations. And here's a few highlights from it. So they say, for example, starts off, if detained by the police, comply with the orders. If they start to ask questions, politely advise them that you do not want to make any statement until you have consulted a lawyer. There's more. This is just a few snippets. Do not sign anything without legal representation. They give all the telephone numbers. So step 1, discharge your responsibilities and ensure the safety of your passengers and crew. There's a bit more to that, but step 2, secure the aircraft so that removal or interference with its contents is only permitted to authorized officials. Step 3, follow company procedures. Step 4, keep your crew together. If possible, obtain rest facilities away from the scene. Advise crew members of your intentions and keep them informed. Step 5, you may be required to comply with drug and alcohol testing. If there's any doubt in regard to the result, ensure that you insist on retaining a duplicate sample for independent analysis. 6, make no statement to the media or take part in any press conference. Step 7, you must produce your flying license if required. You should not allow the official to retain the license. Step 8, consider carefully the wisdom of continuing to operate further flights. 9, if possible, obtain copies of all original documents and copies of recorded interviews. Prepare all written statements. 10, with the help of your union representative and legal counsel, and consider carefully authorizing any circulation beyond the official investigation. And 11, if required to make statements in the absence of specific advice, confine them to factual evidence without speculating, amplifying, and in the language of your choice. Warning, parts of the aircraft structure and its contents may be made of materials that are dangerous. And there's a whole bunch of telephone numbers that I can use to get hold of the experts in my union. And I've always had that with it. I've never, ever considered the possibility of having an accident, but those kind of things are vital when you do. So it gets your head in the right mode, in a kind of survival situation, certainly for the first 24 or 48 hours until you can get expert advice and you can have other people with a clear head help guide you through the next few days.
Would you mind reading out all the telephone numbers as well? No, I'm just kidding.
I could if you wanted.
No, I'm just kidding.
You've got to be
+44.
Yeah, with the names and the telephone. No,
yeah, exactly.
It reminds me a little bit of the many of the people listening to the show saw the movie Sully, and it was the kind of, exactly where there was a major accident, and he didn't go off and just immediately start, spewing stuff. From what I remember, maybe they did. I don't know. Am I right about that? Where they didn't really say much?
No,
right
you're correct. Yeah.
No, their union reps are pretty much on the scene.
They were on it
straight away.
quickly.
Yeah. And the thing is to have just someone there who's not involved, who has a clear head. It doesn't have to be initially a union rep. It has to be someone independent, preferably not in the company, preferably not on the investigation or on the police, who can be an independent arbiter, can give you a bit of friendly advice to make sure you don't blow your mouth off and say something that could subsequently incriminate you, not because you deserve to be incriminated, but because you're just not really in control of your full faculties anymore. Right. You're just probably bemused as to what's occurred.
Great advice, Nick. Thank you. Okay, quickly, we're going to skip around here. Number 8, Kent writes, thought you might want to know about this and pass it on to the APG community for commercial pilots. No need to mention my name. Oops, sorry, Kent.
Too late.
Yeah. So he sent me a link, or sent us a link that we'll have in the show notes, and it's a link to LinkedIn, funny enough, .com, and this is posted by Catherine B. Preston. Commercial pilot input needed. The FAA-funded Airport Cooperative Research Program, the ACRP, is examining factors affecting the use and availability of electric preconditioned air, PCA, and 400 hertz ground power systems at U.S. airports. The research team needs pilot input to gain a complete understanding of this challenge and identify solutions. If you're a commercial pilot or know someone who is, please message me to participate in a 4-minute survey. It really is only 4 minutes to complete. Thank you. And so I went to the link, clicked on it, and I am on LinkedIn, although I have to admit I hardly ever go there. So if you have sent me some kind of request to add me and all that kind of stuff, and you haven't heard from me, well, it's because I really never go to LinkedIn.
I heard the Sultan of Brunei was offering you a job.
Really? Oh, maybe
And there's someone with lottery winnings trying to get in touch with you.
$250,000 a month.
You guys are joking.
You didn't get that?
No.
Oh,
anyway,
damn.
the problem. Well, I have many problems, but the problem that I had when I clicked on this link is that apparently, at least it seems to me, I don't know if you guys have tried to click on this link or not,
Negative.
but mine said that you have to be a premium LinkedIn member to access this person's stuff, and I'm thinking, well, I don't want to be here. You can sign up for a free trial. And I go, no, I'm not doing that. So I don't know. Maybe it was just me. Maybe I clicked the wrong thing or whatever. So I'm not sure, but you may run into that, but hopefully not, because I'm sure that Catherine B. Preston would like to hear from as many commercial pilots as possible when it comes to doing the survey. So.
Well, I can do the survey right now. Yes, we'd like ground power. Yes, we'd like preconditioned air.
Yes, as long as it's reliable ground power and it is really, really good conditioned air where it doesn't require that we have our APU running to supplement it.
Because I don't want to run my APU unnecessarily.
Exactly. We would love to do that. And, oh, by the way, don't pull the power in air, especially either. Before you have asked us either non-verbally or verbally to do so. Thank you very much.
Because that becomes very embarrassing.
Yeah, and especially at night, it gets very dark. And if we've spent the last 15, 20 minutes or more inputting our flight plan and performance data and all that kind of stuff in our computers, and our computers die, and then we have to reboot and do everything over again, we don't really like it.
Nope.
It kind of
and it gets very hot in the airplane.
Yes.
300 people crammed into a metal tube is not good.
Right. So, yeah, that's what we have to say about that.
I was going to say, Catherine, is a bit of a no-brainer, but do carry on anyway.
Yeah.
Yes, but there must be data to support changes.
Good point, HR.
Thank you, HR.
Okay.
Listen, it's an easy study for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Publishable, maybe.
Yeah, true.
Anyway.
Hopefully, I'm going to give it a go again, see if I can participate, because I would really like to.
I have been actively trying to get rid of my LinkedIn account and don't seem to be able to. So that's all I'll say about LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many times during the week between shows, I'm thinking, that's it, I'm quitting Facebook. But then I remember there is a Airline Pilot Guy show page on Facebook, and that would probably die as well. So I don't know. It's like, I just do not want to anyway.
Social media anymore.
Especially if, sorry to those of you who out there who love Facebook, but I'm not one of them. Okay, and finally we have a one more piece of audio feedback for today's show. We're going to close it with this one, and this is from Arun. He's in India, and he said, here's some audio feedback. Thank you so much for the podcast. And he says sent from his iPhone. And so let's listen to Arun and his audio feedback.
Hey, Captain Jeff, it's me, Arun, your listener from India. I want to preface this feedback by giving you a little context. I live in the southern state of Kerala, Kerala, for those of you that are interested. And recently, we've been hit by massive floods the likes of which we've never seen. And first off, I'd like to thank the Air Force and tell you about the wonderful work that they've been doing. Our skies were filled with C-17 Globemasters and Ilyushin 76s. And I was personally affected by the flood, and we personally got like 4 helicopter loads of supplies, medicines, and stuff. And the armed forces were doing a great job, and I'd be remiss if I did not thank them. So, if anyone in the Indian Air Force or the Coast Guard is listening, I want to thank you personally for doing amazing job. You guys were heroic. And the second person that I'd like to thank is Captain Jeff himself. Let me explain. On the first day of the disaster, the water levels were climbing really quickly. I mean, it went up by 6 feet in a couple of hours, and I was understandably tensed. And I did not have much to do because I was practically stranded in my house. I did not have anything else to do. And doing nothing was driving me insane. It was just so scary and traumatic. So what I did was I put on a few episodes of Airline Pilot Guy, and Captain Jeff, your humor and, your overall demeanor calmed me down a lot. It really did calm me down, and you helped me so much that I cannot even tell you how much you helped me. It really calmed me down in that situation, and I really thank you for that. I don't know, Captain Jeff, you did a really, you helped me a lot that day. If you're ever in the area, and I doubt that you will ever be in, South India, I'd be more than happy to buy you a beer and some, authentic Indian cuisine. So if you're ever in the area, hit me up. I mean, great podcast. I mean, you really did touch me personally that day. Thank you so much, Captain Jeff. Clear skies and tailwinds. Boy, don't we take clear skies for granted.
Yes, we do. Thank you very much. That was something. I appreciate the kind words. And I'm glad that our show was there to help you kind of take your mind off of the very stressful situation that you were experiencing there. And, we do this, out of love for and passion for aviation, and our love and passion for our community. And honestly, for selfish reasons as well. I mean, at least I'll speak for myself, because I really get a kick out of every week being able to get together with really good friends and talk about mostly aviation, not always, but it's a really a big part, or the bestest part of the week for me, is getting together and doing the show. And I'm glad that our excitement about talking about aviation and the building of the community is something that you have benefited from, Arwen.
I second what Jeff said. Cheers. Thank you, Jeff.
And I hope the aftermath of that flooding hasn't left you in too bad a state, because it sounded like it was a very big problem for a lot of people.
We take a lot of things for granted, that's for sure. And when we hear somebody like you talking about the floods and everything else, it's just, it really makes you think about, our own lives and, what we consider hardships. And when you compare it to what some folks' hardships are around this world, it's nothing. So
true.
Absolutely.
Very true.
All right. Well, again, thanks, Arun, for the feedback. And that's going to do it for today's show. Not sure how much this thing is going to work out to, because we had to take a little technical break there, but it's going to be somewhere between 2:45 and 3, I think. So that's just about right. And I think the last thing that we should do before we end today's show is talk about some resources for you. The airlinepilotguy.com website, where you can watch the show, listen to the show. You can learn about the crew and the community, buy merchandise. I think that's still there. And learn about the coffee fund if you have the financial resources to support us in that way, and much, much more. So check it out, airlinepilotguy.com. Coffee fund. Oh, I did mention that, didn't I? let's see, what else? We have apps for our smart devices, iOS
Which
and
sadly
Android.
didn't notify today.
Oh, you
What?
didn't?
Oh, I got
one.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, Captain Nige said no, didn't get any notification. I didn't see one on mine.
Well,
Unavailable in the UK today. We apologize.
Yeah, fair. We blocked out the UK. Sorry. But yeah, I did get one.
Same here.
Yeah, which I'm very surprised by, but because it's been pretty consistent for me in the last several episodes, so that's good. That at least it's working for some of us. But anyway, that's part of the the advantage when it works. Having the app on your phone, even if you never refer to it, you can set it up for push notifications. And when we plan to do a show, and when I've finished the editing and posting, I'll put out a push notification letting you know that it's available. And
I have noticed if you stop getting the notifications for some reason, if you uninstall it and reinstall it, that seems to fix the problem.
Okay, very
Because that
good.
happened to
I
me.
got it on my iPhone. Nige is probably using some cheap, nasty Hong Kong phone.
It's probably an Android platform, so maybe there's something going on with the Android push notifications. But whatever, it's free. You can't, you don't lose anything except for maybe a little tiny bit of space on your phone. So check that out by going to the Google Play Store for the Android, and then the Apple iOS App Store, whatever they're calling it, App Store, I guess. And we're on social media as well.
Indeed, we are. You can head over to Twitter at APG Crew is where you'll find all of us. Our individual account information is pinned to the top of that page if you'd like to interact with us one-on-one. Or you can head over to Facebook, facebook.com/Airline Pilot Guy, assuming that Jeff does not get so fed up with Facebook that he deletes his account in the next week or so. But we'd love to have you there.
An eye on it.
Yes, mostly manned by Captain Nick, so we appreciate his efforts there.
Yeah. Liz and Captain Nick kind of keep watch over there on the Airline Pilot Guy show page. And we're also on Slack, and I've been much better lately kind of checking that out and not being a slacker myself. And
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Hillel will tell you about that. Hillel, come on out now. Okay, here, let me move out of the way.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share ideas and news. We suggest episode and Plain Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo at airlinepilotguy.com. Or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled HI11E1, Hotel India 11 Echo 1. And see you in Slack.
Thank you, Hillel, and thanks again for setting that all up for us and kind of managing that whole thing. I know that's not an easy job. And finally, looking forward to being back here again next week for another show, talking about aviation news and answering some more feedback. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Goodbye.
Yay. All right.
Woohoo.
It happened.
All right, guys.
Made it through a whole show again.
Brilliant.
Somehow, some way.
Yeah. Recorders off.
Recorders
off.
Off.
And I'll definitely need the files from both of you.
Oh,
No
okay.
problem.
I guess I
there
have
was-
to boot up.
Now, there was a time that it seemed to me that Nick's signal was kind of getting a little funky because it looked like Steph was still okay.
Yeah,
But
I
it was
saw
while-
that.
Okay.
And then,
Toward the end.
yes.
But
There was a-
throughout the whole thing, there were times when both of you were, so I figured it must be my bandwidth here. In
Yeah,
the
there were times where I had both of you, where I had trouble.
Okay.
Yeah, there were 5 or 10 seconds when you both Skyped out to me. So
Yeah. So we blame Jeff.
Yeah, so it's my fault, of course.
Absolutely.
Common thread.
It was my equipment, my fault, whatever. I take full responsibility, but I give you full responsibility of making sure you give me those files.
I'm working on it right now. I haven't logged into Evernote in so long. Oh man. It's gonna
Why do you
be-
have to? Oh, to put it in there.
To put it
I mean,
in.
if you'd rather Dropbox it to me or whatever,
I don't
that's
have
fine.
Dropbox either. Well, I
Well,
do,
don't
but
do
it's
that then.
full. I do,
Okay.
but it's mindful.
Okay.
It wants to update. No. Oh, now I just have a spinning wheel of.
Oh no.
Mm.
Yeah, I hate when I see that. I'm like, okay, don't touch anything. Don't touch anything. Just walk away.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks everybody in the chat room. Sorry about the technical snafu with the Chrome browser shutting down there at an inopportune time. But let's see. Oh, too late, Mike. He said, "Don't admit liability, Jeff." Oh well. Let's see.
Without legal representation, you're quite right too.
Yes. Well, HR is here. He can admit anything he wants to HR.
But up to HR, that's the last person you want to admit it to.
Yeah. And honestly, at this point, I really have no desire to. And if you're listening right now, and you're a lawyer, we love you. You're necessary for our legal system, but I just don't really want to engage in one right now.
I could.
Understandable.
You see, even those guys in that plain tale, they did a fantastic job. But you can bet your bottom dollar there were people who on that airplane who would be taking out lawsuits against the company, the pilots, the individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And you've just got to be so careful what you say on the PA, what you do afterwards, how you conduct yourself. It just becomes a nightmare. Shark infested custom.
Yep. So true. So true. All right. Anything else we want to say to our community live?
We love you. We love you all.
You guys are the best.
You are. Well,
Well, you're the best part of the show?
No, they're not the best part of the show. Clearly not the best part of the show.
We thank you for your 50% error rate, which contributes to our 50% accuracy rate.
Yes, we do appreciate that.
Not sure what that means.
I love all the abbreviation explanations for PIP, which is person impersonating pilot. Pilot in Phenom. Yeah. And then Liz said it should be pill pilot in lemon. And then everyone starts coming up with PIL abbreviations. So
I missed all that. I'm sorry, because
it was really good.
When the Chrome browser crashed on this machine, the one that I'm using to host the Hangout, that's where I had the chat room window as well, which is also another Chrome browser window. And then after a while, I couldn't figure out a way to get that thing back. But I had the Hangout, so okay, I'm not going to mess with that computer over there. So I had to figure out a way to get it back over here without making sound and all that kind of stuff, and finally got it back. So I guess I missed all that pip stuff. Oh well.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast, and then the crew
Goodbye, everybody.
talk about the next episode.
Adios.